People always tell you, Cole, that I want more football until that more football is less NFL or less college. If it's anything other than those two things, they don't want it, except for Kurt Warner, who you would think is a pretty smart guy, right? He won a Super Bowl. He won a couple of NFL MVPs. Kurt Warner is telling us something that we all already know. That quarterbacks coming out of college just aren't ready to play in the NFL. Welcome into Wire to Wire. He's Cole Bryson. My name is Diesel. Big show for you today. Coming up at 4:20, Dan Morgan, the general manager of the Carolina Panthers, going to join us right here on the Fan Upstate. Make sure you're here. Set an alarm for it. Just stick around the whole time. How about that? Don't leave, and you won't have to come back. Dawn Staley is getting a statue in Columbia. Should she be getting one? Should Steve Spurrier get a statue before she does? That conversation coming up at 4 o'clock, and you Tolos are going to be a part of it all the way up until then and through the end of the show at 6 o'clock. We appreciate you being here. The 25 Tolos, we're less than a minute in, Cole. 25 Tolos already watching the stream. We love to see that. Jump on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Just search for The Fan Upstate. Hit that like button, subscribe, follow, whatever button it is on that particular platform, and jump in, chop it up with the other Tolos. But Kurt Warner told us something that we already know, Cole, and that is that NFL rookie quarterbacks just are not ready to start. So the question is, based on what Kurt Warner says here, do we need another league of football, a tweener league of football, to make sure that these guys are ready to play when their number is called? Here's a tiny clip of Rich Eisen, the first part of this conversation, and then Kurt Warner jumping in.
If I'm drafting these kids tonight or tomorrow night or Saturday, and I know they're going to have to play, how the hell am I getting them ready?
I think it's a great,
I want to know.
It's a great point. And I would say the first thing is you've got to give me more time with my guys in the offseason. You know, even if it is just that position, or, I mean, it just, there's more that goes into playing quarterback and that you have to work on, that you just can't do it during the regular season. You just don't have time to really do it. Or, as you're alluding to, we need another league. Like, I often, in my journey,
Okay, we need another league, says Kurt Warner. We need another league. You draft quarterbacks in the first round. You give them about 4 or 5 months tops, and then you throw them right into the fire. And, of course, a lot of them simply can't hack it at this point. There's a reason why the bust rate on first-round quarterbacks in the NFL is 45%. 45%. Half. It's a 50-50 crapshoot. You draft a quarterback in the first round, it's a 50-50 crapshoot if that guy will ever go on to amount to a hill of beans. So just on its surface, Cole, do we need an NFL D League to get these guys ready to go and play?
On the surface, when you say we need a D-League because the guys aren't ready, on the surface it may sound good, but the more I think about it, the more that I dig into it, the more that I ask myself questions about how it would benefit these stars, including quarterbacks, Diesel, I'm not so sure that even a guy like Kurt Warner, who you mentioned has forgotten more football knowledge than we'll ever know, combined with all the Tolos mixed in together, look, it sounds cute. It sounds nice, but my worries on the surface, my concerns on the surface are just because we have a developmental league for football does not mean that those quarterbacks, and I know we're talking about all positions here, but mainly quarterback because that's the one that matters the most, Diesel. I just don't know that when you talk about the sport of football, and I know you'll use the baseball comparison in a few minutes. We'll get to that because it's similar to what baseball does with minor league, right? When you talk about football, it's different. Quarterbacks in a minor league football system, Diesel, are not going to be learning the same fundamentals that they'll need on Sundays. Like, I get that it's the same sport, but what people have to understand is middle school football, high school football, college football is also the same sport as what they're playing on Sundays. But when you walk onto that field on Sunday, it's a completely different game. And my worry, my concern is that even if you were to have a developmental league for the NFL, I still don't know if that would translate to the development the coaches and quarterbacks are looking for that they'll need on Sundays.
Why do we need a D-League when we already have college football? College football is the D-League for NFL. A lot of these teams are already running NFL concepts. They're bringing guys from the NFL down to coach at the college level. That's as close as you're going to get to a developmental league. If you try to sandwich something in between college football and NFL football, it's going to die on the vine within a year. There is no way, no how, no way whatsoever that league would survive and flourish and be helpful to these players. You know why? Because the best players, and if we're talking about league-wide here, I know Kurt's specifically talking about quarterbacks, but if we don't force every player to go into this league to develop, then the best of the best coming out of college who are already NFL ready, and we've seen rookies like Jaden Daniels that who was it that brought up on the stream earlier? It was the OG Tolo JB brought up Jaden Daniels. That guy was NFL ready immediately. I know that he's kind of a freak, right? He's a unicorn to go out there and take his team to where he took them as a rookie. It doesn't really happen. But if you try to do this league in between, the best players are going to go off to the NFL, or they're going to get to the NFL, they're going to flame out, and then still have to go back to the D-League anyway. And then what are you going to do? You're going to sandwich them in a league that no one's going to watch, and then more talent is going to come out of that college game year in and year out. They're going to get jumped, and they'll never see the NFL anyway. This is a terrible idea.
Well, let's ask this question, Diesel, because we hadn't touched on this yet. What happens in a sport, in a society? What happens when you start making the game less about football and fundamentals and more about money? And what I mean by that is you're asking college football right now to be that developmental league for the NFL. Well, guess what? Right now, the last thing on a quarterback's mind in college that's any good is, am I being developed the right way? That's just a fact. That's a fact. That's the last thing, Diesel, on their mind. I'm not saying it's not out there. I'm not saying 1 out of every 15, 20 quarterbacks aren't doing it, aren't preparing themselves the right way. But we've made this sport so much about money that you look at baseball, because I know we're going to use that comparison a lot, and people will use it. Minor league players hardly get paid. There are people who are listening to this show right now, Diesel, who make way more money than minor league baseball players do. That's the reality. That minor league system is not about money. That minor league system in baseball is about development. Are we going to get that in football? Are you going to tell me that Shedeur Sanders or any other quarterback is going to say, you know what, I'm willing to take a few years and not worry about millions, and I'm going to go make sure that I'm developed the right way? It would never happen.
So we've got this ABCDEFL league that exists in the springtime that nobody watches. There's only 8 teams. I think they show it on gas station screens while you're pumping your gas. God. That's the only place to watch this thing. That is the closest thing the NFL has and should use as a developmental league. You put a guy on your roster as a rookie. You get time with him. You get to evaluate him inside of your system. You say, ooh, that guy's not ready. So in the springtime, you send him back to the UFL, let him get some snaps, and then maybe by the next season, his second season in the NFL, maybe he's ready to go out and play. Maybe he's developed. But the problem with doing that, Cole, and there is an apparatus where it could work. The problem with doing that is you don't have one UFL team for every NFL team. No. And if people say, well, Major League Baseball has a minor league structure. You got the majors, you got AAA, AA, high single A, low single A ball. Guess what? All of those teams are based out of one major league franchise's philosophy, upward synergy, making sure everything is in alignment. Our single A team and our AA team and our AAA team does things the way that our major league team does. That way you stay within that organization for a year, 5 years, whatever it takes for you to get to the major league level. You're already indoctrinated. You're fully trained up in the way that the Boston Red Sox or the New York Yankees or the Texas Rangers do baseball, and you're set up as well as you possibly can. That's not the way the NFL is set up, baby. If you stink, you're washed, you're gone. They're not going to give you another chance. You know why? Because there's another 5-star coming out of college next year. Actually, there's more like 5, 6, 7 of them coming out next year.
You know what's interesting about the baseball comparison that we've made several times already? And by the way, Tolos, I want to hear from you on the text line. You guys are pretty doorknob dead right now. Let's get that changed. The stream, pretty good interaction. Text line, not so much at 844-FAN phone, 844-326-3663. Diesel, it begs the question when you look at the comparisons between the way minor league baseball and Major League Baseball are set up compared to the NFL that you just mentioned. It begs the question that we have to ask in terms of development. Did we ever care about development in the NFL, or is it just something that we just started caring about because Tom Brady made a statement that these players were having to be dumbed down, when in reality, for years and years and years now, baseball has been set up to where you do have development, where you do have pitchers, to your point, go through the minor league system. Even though they're not at the pro level yet, they're still a pro under that organization's umbrella. So, my brain goes to, well, when have we ever cared about development?
No, we haven't.
We never have.
We never have, because the NFL is such a small league. When you think about the totality, the number of players that come out of college every year, the length of time that these guys play in the NFL, what's the average? 3 years, but some of these guys are rocking 10, 15-year careers in the NFL. They're not churning out and spinning out and going somewhere else after they've been in the NFL for a couple of years. So there's a limit to the number of guys that can come in, and eventually you wash out and you have to go get a job at Amazon. Like who was it? What's his name? The offensive tackle from LSU who cracked the joke. If you let a guy come through once every game,
Campbell.
Yeah, Will Campbell. There you go. I said Cam. I was close.
You're close.
So I mean, look, here's how it could and should work in a perfect world, right? There's 8 UFL teams. If that's all there's going to be is 8 UFL teams, what's 4 times 8?
What was the question again?
What's
32?
4 times 8? 32.
Yeah.
How many NFL teams are there?
32.
32. Okay. How about you divide the UFL up among those 32 NFL teams? You'd have 4 NFL teams per every 1 UFL team. And you can divide that up however you want. You can assign the Birmingham Stallions to the NFC South if you want to. That could create some problems, because then you got 4 teams inside the same division fighting for players off of the same roster. You could divide it up and have one from each conference being assigned to each UFL team. And then those teams who are not really going to have a major conflict of interest can pluck guys off of that spring roster. Here's our 4 teams. These are the 4 guys, or these are all the guys that got cut off of our rosters in summer camp and the lead up to week 1 of the season. All those guys go play for the UFL squad next year. And then by the end of their season, they've had time to develop, and we can pluck guys back off of those rosters to help fill our own holes.
You know what's interesting about it when we have this conversation? I think the main thing that we forget, Diesel, is that baseball and football shouldn't be compared, because
it's two totally different
sports, where in one sport, Diesel, you have one guy who touches the ball every play when you're on offense, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, we know you have a pitcher in baseball who touches the ball. You can compare the pitcher to the quarterback position. But when you talk about comparing the development of these two sports, baseball, football, Diesel, think about it. And football, to your point a minute ago, about having 4 teams and dividing and doing all the math and having developmental teams for each pro organization. And football, I think the problem with that is it's a win-now league. I'm not saying baseball is not a win-now league, that the pressure isn't on in baseball like it is in football. But in my mind, baseball is so much more of an individualistic sport, mm-hmm. that development and training is so much more, I don't want to say important, but so much more valuable, because it is an individual sport. I know you're still on a team, but at the end of the day, if you've ever played baseball, you know it's one-on-one. That's sure. What it is. It's one-on-one. And when you talk about football with the quarterback position, that's all owners and GMs and coaches, that's all they care about in terms of surviving another day. to get that next paycheck or not get fired because the quarterback makes the team in the NFL.
Well, here's a very simple solution. I presented a very convoluted system of matching 4 NFL teams to a UFL team. Here's a very simple solution. Don't let these guys join the NFL until they've finished a 4-year college program. Don't let them out in 3 years.
No, I don't hate that.
Don't let them out in 3 years. That is the simplest possible solution, not to let them out of college after their 3rd season. What's the actual rule? 3 years out of high school, you can join the NFL. You got to get rid of that rule. You got to keep them in college for 4 years. Or number 2, and this is a novel concept, don't start rookies. Stop starting rookies. Stop expecting 21-year-old guys who have been in the system for 5 months to go out there and win you football games.
And that won't happen just for the simple fact of, like I said a minute ago, coaches get paid to win games. Yeah. And you've got to, like, if Josh Rosen or Sam Darnold's back there and can't hit the broadside of a barn in training camp, and you've got this young stud Diesel who everybody's raving about, what are you going to put Josh Rosen in and say, like, no offense to those guys, but you know what? I'll go back to what you said about the 4-year rule first. I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. The only issue that I see there is, even if they were to stay for 6 years, is college developing them for that the game right to way. Translate? Yeah, to the right way, for that to translate in the NFL.
You would have to massively overhaul the transfer portal rules, the NIL rules.
And they're different offenses.
And at the end of the day, you can't fix everybody, right? If you've got a guy who just hasn't developed the way that you thought he would. He's got talent, but he just has, like, some guys just have it or they don't, right? You have enough talent to get you to a certain level, but you don't have quite enough talent to get you to the NFL level. What you need to go forward. I think Kurt's trying to fix he's trying to fix the NFL's impatience by saying, let's create a whole other league. Let's spend millions upon millions of dollars for additional development, when all you need to do, if you're an NFL GM or a head coach, is be cool, baby. Just calm down. Give them another year to sit behind somebody who's been in the league a little bit longer. Let them watch.
My question to Kurt Diesel to that exact point would be, if I were sitting across from Kurt right now, I'd say, well, Kurt, that sounds great, but our owner is going to give the head coaches 3 to 4 to 5 more years to not get fired. Well, that's the reality.
And to be fair, Kurt had to leave the NFL game to go get his development. And that second half of that clip, and there's no reason to play the whole thing, he talks about being drafted by the Green Bay Packers. And he got cut from the Packers in I think he said 94. And he didn't make it back to the NFL until 99. In those 5 years, the starter of the Green Bay Packers was Brett Favre. And guess what? Brett Favre started every single game for the Packers in that 5-year stretch. Kurt would have never played if he had stayed with the Green Bay Packers. But he talked about going off and playing Arena League football, going off and playing in Europe, and getting a tremendous amount of live starting reps that he otherwise wouldn't have gotten if he had stayed with the Green Bay Packers in the NFL.
The reality of it is, there's only why do we call once in a generation players? Why do we have that term? Why do we have that phrase? There's only so many Michael Jordans. There's only so many LeBron James. There's only so many, let's say, Jaden Daniels Diesel, who can step on the field immediately and produce. Robert Griffin was that way in his rookie year. He produced immediately. We use the term once in a generation type player because it's truly once in a generation type player that can defy the odds and say, you know what? I'm just so much more talented than you. It doesn't matter if I have that development and training. I'm going to go out and I'm going to be better than you just because I'm that talented. You're literally asking players who are less talented to come into that position and perform just because in the past you've seen really uber talented guys do that, and that's just not fair.
Well, the unfair level of expectation of players coming into the NFL will never shrink. That's always going to be a problem. You will always be compared to the top 5 to 10 who have ever done it at your position. And if you're not that guy, you're not that guy.
You're not that guy. Speaking of Shador, no, I'm just kidding. We're not going there. We're not doing that. We're not going there in the next segment. But where we are going is we're going to put our grades, our opinions, and Tolo's your opinions as well, on the landing spots for every quarterback that got drafted. I'm not talking about the unsigned free agents or undrafted free agents. The ones that got drafted. We discuss next. It's Diesel almost summertime, and it's that time of year where if you Tolos out there, which by the way stands for turn on, leave on, that's what we ask you to do each and every day on the show. We had somebody ask that in the stream during the first segment. If you know someone, friends or family who may be a teacher, it's the time of year where you start doing what? Grading those papers, grading those exams. We, Diesel, you and I, are going to join in on the fun as well. It's time to grade the quarterbacks that got drafted, all two of them. And I'm kidding, it was more than two. It was like 5 in the 2025 NFL draft where they landed. And we start with the Cleveland Browns, who had 7 picks in the 2025 NFL draft and 2 quarterbacks taken. Of those 7 picks, Diesel, we know, round 3, pick 94, Cleveland selected Dylan Gabriel, quarterback from Oregon. And then in round 5, the world stopped turning at pick 144 when Shedeur Sanders, quarterback out of Colorado, was finally drafted. When you look at not what Cleveland did, but where these quarterbacks landed, it's really interesting that this team has 2 quarterbacks drafted within 2 rounds of each other. Diesel, let's start with this. Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel, just to start the conversation, when you talk about grading the situations where these quarterbacks landed, who do you think has the leg up today on the 29th of April between these 2 quarterbacks, Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders? Do you feel like one of them has a leg up going into the summer, OTAs, and training camp?
Oh, man, without doing a tremendous amount of film study on both of these guys, I mean, both are talented. Both are good. I'd say it depends on which direction do they want to go. I mean, Dylan Gabriel's kind of a little guy. He's not a big dude. I think Shedeur is a little taller, a little heavier than he is. I think he's more in the vein and the style of Deshaun Watson. So if the offense is still built around Deshaun Watson's skill set,
was Kevin Stefanski. I mean,
then Shedeur seems like more of the answer, right? Now Deshaun, I mean, we were listening to the Rich Eisen show in here before we came on the air, and it sounds like Deshaun's not going to play this year. And so they have no choice but to adjust the system for a Joe Flacco. And I mean, think about it this way, Cole. Joe Flacco's on a 1-year contract with the Browns. Deshaun Watson, if he doesn't ever get back out there and play, he's going to be shipped off the moment they can. I know you probably can't go into the season carrying 4 quarterbacks on your roster, but I mean, come on. The smart play would be to keep both of those guys because there's a good chance that Joe Flacco and Deshaun Watson are not going to be on this team in the very near future.
And right now they have 5.
Got 5.
Who's the 5th? Kenny Pickett.
Oh, God, I forgot.
So
Kenny
they've got Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, who they just drafted.
God,
Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Deshaun Watson.
Why do they do this to themselves?
I would give neither one of them a leg up. I asked you a trick question. I don't think either one of them have a leg up because of the situation. If you're looking at this with Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, Diesel, drafted to the Browns, let's look at it from an organization standpoint. How do you grade the organization by drafting 2 of these quarterbacks? Now, I like what they did at Mason Graham, the Michigan defensive lineman, right? Quinshon Judkins out of Ohio State's a heck of a running back. He's going to be really good in Cleveland. They have pieces. But I just don't know that when you talk about grading this organization with their quarterback selections, I can't give them anything higher than a C+. And maybe that's a little unfair, but I just can't give them anything higher than that. Based on just the quarterback. Just the quarterback.
Just the quarterback room?
Just the quarterback. Yeah. What they did in the draft with Shedeur and Dylan Gabriel, it doesn't move the meter a lot for me, man. Maybe I'm wrong. I give them a C+.
Yeah, it's God, why would you take 2? I mean, I get that maybe – why would you do that?
I don't know.
Why would you do that? Brown's going to Brown. Browns have no clue.
Browns are going to
That organization for the last 30, 40 years has not had a clue how to draft quarterbacks.
No, let's go to the next team that took a quarterback. How about this one? Has not been talked about a lot. The Houston Texans, who have a really good quarterback in C.J. Stroud, right? We all know that. They had 9 picks. Diesel, with their 6th round pick at 197, they selected Graham Mertz, quarterback out of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You talked about this yesterday. I don't know that 6th-round guys have a really, really bright future. He played for Wisconsin, also played for Florida.
If only there was a D-League.
Only if there was a D-League for Graham Mertz to go into.
Have fun in Arena League.
And that's my point with this one. It's kind of hard to judge or grade Houston's pick here in the 6th round because this guy, I mean, it's not quarterback 2, right? He's not going to, certainly not going to beat out C.J. Stroud. I just don't know what their plan was here. Again, maybe he's a flower in the rough or a flower in the rough. Maybe he's a diamond in the rough, right? And they get surprised, but I don't know what they were doing here with this selection.
I mean, I look at the position groups that they drafted after Graham Mertz in the 6th round. They drafted a defensive lineman and a tight end in the 7th round. I don't know who else was there. I mean, without going back and looking at every single pick, was there not a defensive lineman that they liked more than Keontae Hamilton?
Hey,
was there not a tight end they liked more than Luke Lockley? I mean, why would you not take one of those guys and maybe take a flyer on a quarterback late? I mean, the acquisition cost is extremely low.
It is
taking somebody in the 6th and 7th rounds, and if you end up cutting them, you end up cutting them. It's not really going to hurt you too much.
Only problem is, listen to this, Diesel. He spent 6 years at the college level. 6 years. And in 6 years, you know how many games he played? 5.
Oh, my.
5.
I'm shocked he even got drafted.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I know that there are situations already taken care of. They have C.J. Stroud, but that one's interesting to me. It was just kind of like, okay. I'm not really sure where they're going. Indianapolis didn't take a quarterback. The Jacksonville Jaguars didn't take a quarterback. They're, happy with Trevor Lawrence. Kansas City didn't take one. The Las Vegas Raiders, Diesel, they did take a quarterback. 2 quarterbacks actually did the Las Vegas Raiders. Tommy Mellott, is that how you say that pronounced? Mellott, out of Montana State, and Cam Miller, quarterback out of North Dakota State. Las Vegas said, hey, we're going to go get these guys from up north who – was that not the national championship game? Montana State and North Dakota State? Or was
Sounds about right.
Montana versus North Dakota State, something like that. Really interesting selections there. Again, maybe that just goes to show how bad this draft was, Diesel, for the quarterback position, right? The Los Angeles Chargers didn't take a quarterback. You look at the Rams, who have an aging Matthew Stafford, right? Matthew Stafford, no quarterback. Really interesting there. I thought that might be a team that might need a quarterback. Miami. We talked about this yesterday. Let's grade Miami's pick in round 7 at 231 of Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers. When it comes to the grading scale, Diesel, I would give Miami a B+. And I know that might sound high for a guy who was picked in the 7th round, but you just mentioned low risk. You get somebody that late who is a really good college player, and your quarterback can't stay healthy. I give Miami a B+ on drafting just their quarterback. What do you think on the quarterback position for Miami? What grade would you give them?
Yeah, I like it. It's low risk. Tua is a high risk starter. I mean, he will find a way to knock himself out for a game or two this year, maybe more. So there's a really good chance that Quinn Ewers has a chance to wow the coaching staff and, use that 7th round selection as motivation to push himself and go out there and be the second quarterback on this roster. He could be the backup by the end of this season.
Yeah. Another team that also picked the quarterback in this year's draft, the New Orleans Saints. They selected quarterback Tyler Shuck out of Louisville, round 2, pick 40, pretty high. I like it. I really like Tyler Shuck. I think he could be a good NFL quarterback. He had a great combine. People really like what he did at his pro day or whatever, whether it was his pro day or combine. They like what he did. The Saints have Derek Carr, Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler, and Jake Hamer all on the roster in the quarterback position. But even with an aging Derek Carr, who's always hurt as well, it seems like, Tyler Shuck may be able to quickly elevate himself. I like this one too for the Saints. I really do. I think they did a pretty decent job. I don't know, though, in terms of putting a letter grade on this one. I need some help here. Taking Tyler Shuck, the Saints, do we give him an A? Is an A too high for Tyler Shuck? For the Saints drafting Shuck? Is an A minus better, maybe?
Where did they take Tyler Shuck?
Round 2, pick
second
40,
round.
Yep.
That's a little high. You probably could have got him lower. I don't know where else they picked. But that to me says that they don't have a lot of faith in Derek Carr. They don't have a lot of faith in Spencer Rattler, which stinks because we know Spencer Rattler's quality and his ability. I mean, Tyler Shuck, second round seems like a bit of a reach. If he was available late second, early third, I think that's where you go with it. You might have still got him at that point.
Yeah, I like A minus, B plus in terms of what the Saints did there at quarterback. The New York Giants, Diesel, had 7 picks in this year's draft. They selected a quarterback in the first round, pick 25, Jackson Dart, quarterback, Ole Miss.
I like that one a lot.
Would you give it an
I
A?
like that pick a lot.
Give it an A?
I would give it an A.
Really?
I would give it an A.
Okay.
Jackson Dart has a cannon for an arm. He's played a ton of college football. What do we start the show with? NFL personnel don't think that college quarterbacks are ready to play when they come out of college. You find a guy who stayed in the pocket for a long time. What did he play? 6 years of college football? He was there for a long time. Kept finding ways to get out on the field and get more eligibility. I think he is as close to a sure thing is not the right word because the bust rate is still high with first round quarterbacks. But I think he might be this year's most mature quarterback.
You know, it's interesting. I'm going to go New York Jackson Dart. I'm going to go B. Diesel, I'm going to give him a B. I don't disagree with anything you said. However, I do think at times when Jackson Dart played really good competition, I don't want to say he folded, but he was awful against Kentucky, right? They lost to LSU, a really good team last year. They lost to Florida, who wasn't great last year. You look at who they beat. They beat Furman by 76. They beat Middle Tennessee. They beat Wake Forest. They beat Georgia Southern. They beat South Carolina, right? That was a good win for Ole Miss. They beat Oklahoma, who wasn't good last year. They hung 63 in Arkansas, who wasn't a good defense last year. They did beat a good Georgia team. I'm not saying the jury is still out on Jackson Dart. I just don't know if he'll translate completely. I'm going to give him a B, though. I'm going to give New York a B on their selection of Jackson Dart. By the way, just in, we get emails from the NFL, Diesel, you and I do. Just in a few minutes ago, the 2025 NFL Draft, second most watched NFL draft ever.
Wow.
Ever. Just in.
Not surprised. And I would be willing to bet that, Shedeur falling all the way to the 5th is a big reason why a lot of people watched past the second and third rounds they otherwise wouldn't have. Because I generally don't watch past the third round. At that point, I'm like, okay, these guys are not making rosters.
It was up 27% from last year. 27%.
They need a star to fall every year.
Yeah. Maybe it was maybe this was all scripted. The average audience of 7.5 million viewers over 3 days, Diesel. That's impressive for the NFL.
Now you're giving the collusion crowd some fodder, right? Because they all think that Shedeur fell because of it was rigged and it's collusion. Now you're giving them some food for that thought.
One more for you. Before we run to a break, one more grade to give. Let's grade the Pittsburgh Steelers selection. In round 6, Diesel, at 185. Pittsburgh needs a quarterback, right? We've talked about this. Will Howard, quarterback, Ohio State. Round 6, pick 185. I could be wrong. I could be dead wrong on this. But I love this. I love it from Pittsburgh. When you look at Will Howard, he is exactly like looking at Josh Allen. There's no difference in the two in terms of height and weight. They look identical. They're the same size. They both have a big arm. Pittsburgh needed a quarterback, cold weather guy, tall guy, also can run. He had several rushing touchdowns a season ago. I apologize for not knowing the exact number off the top of my head, Diesel. I give this an A+ on the part of Pittsburgh for draft. It's a late 6th round pick. I get it. But when the low risk, high ceiling Will Howard, I absolutely love it. I'm not a Steelers fan, but I think this could turn out good for Pittsburgh.
Do you remember his quotes about wanting to go kick Penn State's asses? Because he's a Pennsylvania kid, grew up loving Penn State, wanted to go to Penn State. They didn't give him a shot. He ends up over at Ohio State. Now he's going back home and playing his professional football in his home state. You got to love a story like that, right? I mean, he's a big dude, like you said, 6'4", 236. I like this pick, and you get him late. Solid choice, man. Sixth round. I mean,
are you surprised though that he fell that late? I am a little bit.
No, I'm not, because it goes back to that conversation we've had the last couple of days of a lot of quarterbacks were taken last year, a lot of old veterans. Joe Flacco, for crying out loud, is going to be starting this year. Those guys are being asked to come back and play longer and longer than they ever have. And so
it's
not
just
that many
crazy.
teams needed him. So that's why so many good quarterbacks got pushed. It's not a indictment on his quality as a quarterback, because we know he's a good quarterback. I just don't think anybody in rounds 3, 4, and 5 really needed quarterbacks.
It's just wild to think about this, though. A quarterback who won the national championship at Ohio State, threw for 35 touchdowns, fell to the 6th round. I mean, maybe
stuff, right?
It's weird. It's a weird time in the NFL, but I really do. I'm going to end with that one. I like that one a lot. I think that one could be special for both Will Howard and Pittsburgh.
So we've been talking nonstop NFL draft the last couple of days. There is another big-time sporting event going on right now. And no, I'm not talking about the NHL playoffs, the NBA playoffs. Things are heating up. Round 1 coming to a close for a lot of these teams. We will talk about it, get you back to up to date with what's going on in the NBA playoffs next. The NBA playoffs opening round coming to a close for a lot of these teams. We got a couple elimination games on the docket tonight. 6 o'clock, Bucks, Pacers. Pacers are up 3-1. 6:30, Pistons, Knicks. The Knicks are up 3-1. Elimination game between the Magic and the Celtics at 8:30. Celtics up 3-1. And we actually have a decent series between the Clippers and the Nuggets, tied 2-2. That game tips off at 10 o'clock, which means, Cole, there ain't no way I'm making it to the end of that one.
That's been the best series of the entire the entire first round. The Clippers Nuggets, it's as good as it gets. You usually don't get first round matchups. That's kind of a matchup you'd expect to see next round, maybe even conference. I mean, these two teams are going at it. It's a great series. Just look at the spread. That tells you all you need to know. Clippers are favored by 1.5. I mean, on the road.
Like I get that game's being played out west. It's in Denver. Is Denver in Mountain Time, which is 2 hours behind us? Okay, then move that game up just a little bit. Can we do that? Can we make it a 9 o'clock Eastern tip off? Because that sucks to have a 10 o'clock Eastern tip off. We have to move East Coast college football games and NFL games back all the time to make it possible for the West Coast audience to watch. We need to do a little bit of that the other way. Yeah, can we make that happen?
They're 2 hours behind us. Is that right?
Or let's just divide the country down the middle, and we'll do East Coast to standard time. Western half of the United States is only 1 hour behind. We got to stop with this garbage of multiple time zones because it's confusing and it makes watching sports late at night suck.
I will say this, though, you mentioned the Bucks Pacers tonight. I've been pleasantly surprised with Indianapolis. Like, I didn't expect them to be a team going into the playoffs that could contend for a title. I still don't know if they're a championship caliber team, but they've just pretty much made light work of Milwaukee. And Milwaukee's not the same team they were when they won the championship a couple of years ago. Indiana's looked really good. I mean, they did win 50 games this year, right? They've looked really good. New York's looked pretty good. Detroit's Detroit, but I expected nonetheless. I didn't think the Magic would win a game in terms of their series with Boston. And then tomorrow, the Lakers, JD mentioned it. He says the Lakers are toast, I fear. I think that series is over. Minnesota went up 3-1. The Lakers have zero depth. Rockets Warriors was interesting for a minute, but Golden State pulled away. It looks like it's going to be Golden State and Minnesota these in the next round, and that's really when I think these series will get a lot better.
I am fascinated by the fact that the Milwaukee Bucks, who won a title under GM John Horst, but have since bumped their head up against the ceiling of this opening round loss kind of cycle that they've been stuck in, that they extended the guy. It blows me away that they've extended that guy, because if I'm Giannis, and I don't know how Giannis feels about John, maybe he likes him personally, but he is the superstar of this team. Why is Giannis not in somebody's office saying, yo, you got to get me a GM that's going to get me some help, right? He's like, Giannis is a superstar who can go out there and drop 30, 35 a night, but he can't carry the team on his back, especially when, you got so many teams that are stacking dudes that are dropping 15, 20 a night.
You know what Milwaukee has shown us? Milwaukee Diesel has shown us that even if you win a championship in 2021, and even if you still have some of the same pieces that you had in 2021, you know where's he at? Where's he at, Matt Kraft? It doesn't mean you're supposed to win championships. I'm kidding. I'm just taking shots.
There's something about 2021 that just snake bites teams that won titles in that year. Who won the national championship in college football 2021?
That's a good question. And Milwaukee, to your point, now has Doc Rivers. He's not the guy.
Stop hiring that
guy anymore. But I will say, first round, before we get into the second round, the first round, the Clippers-Nuggets series just can't get any better. I am looking forward to that one tonight. I think that one very well could go 7 games while everybody else is just sitting on their hands waiting because, their series is already over. I love the Clippers-Nuggets series. I really do.
It's sad to see a once proud franchise in the Miami Heat get swept the way that they did, and then losing Game 4 by 55 points. That's pathetic.
They've dropped. They've dropped, man. I don't know what it is. They've lost that Heat culture that they had. Is what they've done. I mean, they're just not good, man. again, I don't know.
Is Crypt Keeper Pat Riley still there?
Yeah.
Got to get rid of Pat.
I don't know what to do in Miami. They were such a good organization, right? But they've just fallen a lot. We revisited, or we talked about this yesterday, Diesel, and we're going to revisit it in the very next segment. We mentioned in Overreaction Monday yesterday in the Daily Wires that Dawn Staley got her statue. We had a million texts on the text line that we didn't even get to about why Steve Spurrier should have a statue. Let's dive back into that. Gamecock fans out there, we want to hear from you next regarding why Steve Spurrier should have a statue if Dawn Staley gets one. Well, if she gets one, why don't he get one? That's the conversation. That was the conversation that was had yesterday on this very show about Dawn Staley's statue and Steve Spurrier. Why hadn't Steve Spurrier gotten a statue if Dawn Staley got one was the question that was asked. We had a lot of text messages during Overreaction Monday that we could not get to. Welcome into Wire to Wire. He sitting across from me is Diesel. I'm Cole Bryson. So good to be with you. If you're listening or watching to the show, 112 watching on the stream right now, you can watch the show live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, or listen on 97.1 FM in Spartanburg, 97.7 FM in Greenville, the free Odyssey app, even on your Alexa, where you can say, hey, Alexa, play The Fan Upstate. So many different ways to consume Diesel and I, but that is where we go. Diesel, is yesterday we started the conversation in Overreaction Monday with Steve Spurrier and Dawn Staley. I didn't know that when Dawn Staley was announced as getting a statue on Twitter yesterday, that Steve Spurrier's name would be thrown out as much as it was yesterday. But that's where I want to go in this segment to start the 4 o'clock hour. I want to hear from you at 844-FAN phone. That's 844-326-3663. For those that did not hear yesterday, Diesel, in your mind, I'll let you start it off here. Does Steve Spurrier deserve a statue?
In Gainesville, yeah, but in Columbia,
Why?
no.
Why? What's your name?
Why? What did Steve Spurrier actually win in Columbia? He had a decent win-loss percentage, and he won the SEC East once. Really, guys? We're giving away statues for one-time divisional winners? What?
You know,
We're comparing Steve Spurrier to Dawn frickin' Staley, who's won 3 national championships. Steve Spurrier won 1 SEC East championship and didn't win the SEC title that year. Come on, the bar cannot be that low in Columbia.
You know what's interesting? We had, I believe it was Tom in Somerville who called in yesterday about this. And look, I know here in South Carolina, Diesel, here in the upstate, we have a lot of Clemson and South Carolina fans that are listening, and that's why I want to open up the phone lines to you. Rick already on the on hold. We'll get to Rick in just a second. But to Tom's point, to play devil's advocate, by the way, I agree with your statement. Steve Spurrier did change South Carolina football and elevate them in a way where they have never been elevated. However, elevating a program to unprecedented heights doesn't deserve a statue. Keeping it there deserves a statue. Winning championships deserves a statue. That's what Dawn Staley did. She took the program at South Carolina, Diesel, from the cellar and took it to the very top. She didn't walk out during the middle of the season and say, peace, holler at you later. What did she do? She went on to win national championships with an S, not just 1, but 2, right? And not just 2. She's continued to build on that success. They're relevant every year. They just played in the national championship. Steve Spurrier, 86-49 at South Carolina. Very, very good. Nobody denies that. But just because you got a program to a point of elevation doesn't mean you deserve a statue in my mind.
So, Tolos, do me a favor, because I don't know every single one of your programs and your campuses, or campi, as Josh Pate likes to call them, the plural of campuses, as well as you do. Those of you who are fans of a school that have a statue dedicated to a player or a coach on your campus right now, who is it and what did they accomplish that deserves the statue? I mean, I'm genuinely saying, help me. I know that there's a statue to George Rogers in Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
He won a Heisman.
That's right.
He won a Heisman.
Yeah.
He deserves to have deserves to have a statue because he won a Heisman. Steve Spurrier didn't win anything. So what does Steve Spurrier deserve a statue for? Jerry Moore has a statue in Boone because he won 3 national titles when he was a head coach there. So those of you who have statues around your campuses, tell me who it is and what it's for, and we'll see if we can figure out what exactly that threshold is. Tom, the only reason why Steve Spurrier should have one is if the statue company was doing buy one, get one that day. And you paid for the Dawn Staley one, and you got the Steve Spurrier for 50% off. I'm not bagging on Steve Spurrier as a coach. He was a great coach. He did great things in South Carolina. but he didn't do statue-worthy things at South Carolina.
JD makes an interesting point on the YouTube stream where he says Steve Spurrier has a dorm and the indoor facility named after him. That's plenty.
Pretty good.
And he does. Going to get to several texts on the Hub City Spartanburgers text line in just a second. Phone lines open, text line open as well. 844-326-3663. We get a Rick and Greer. What's up, Rick?
I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to I can't take it no more, okay?
Oh, God.
Oh, God. Here we go.
Is he calling in on topic
No.
or is he calling in on something else?
I'm out traveling
That
every
means off
day,
topic.
Okay. Thanks, Rick.
and I have to put up with these damn buses. These buses stop every 5 seconds. I can't – I turn on another road. There's a bus. I've stopped 31 times trying to make it back to Greer. 2 hours and 20 minutes I've been behind buses. I'm sick of the buses. Do away with buses, okay?
Are you talking about school buses? Or are you talking about city buses? Or are you talking about tour buses?
School buses. Yellow freaking school buses.
Well, you know, Rick, you can't,
Oh, boy.
you shouldn't do it. Legally, you're not supposed to do it. But why don't you just go ahead and try to pass one while the stop sign's out?
Oh,
See what happens.
I did that the other day, and
You got
it
strip
was a
searched.
double yellow line, and the cops got me.
imagine that.
Well, there it is.
Rick,
I can't afford another $100. Okay?
Rick, number one, Rick, the Tolo takeover is Thursday at 5. That's where
Okay.
this is
I
supposed
was
to go,
so mad
but you couldn't
that I
wait.
had to call in. Okay?
Number two, you're a Clemson fan. Does Steve Spurrier deserve a statue? Let's get back on topic.
Heck no. Steve Spurrier did nothing.
Oh,
Did he
God.
win anything? A national championship? Did he win anything?
There you go.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick. If you want to compare it to another SEC coach who does have a statue on campus, right down the road, the University of Georgia put up a statue of Vince Dooley on campus, 201, 77, and 10 as a head coach. He won a national championship and 6 SEC championships. See, nobody counts divisional titles unless you don't have any conference championships.
Yeah.
That's the weakest stat to count to say, well, he won an SEC East division.
No, I want to be very clear on this. I think Steve Spurrier tremendously changed South Carolina football for the good. That's my opinion. He was absolutely phenomenal at South Carolina. In my mind, there's not a better coach in today's world where you have to deal with NIL and portal and all this other stuff. In my mind, there wasn't a better coach in college football who had a better feel for how the game goes, how to adjust, how to make plays than Steve Spurrier did. I think he was the absolute best at in-game adjustments, in-game coaching. I love Steve Spurrier. I really do. Steve Spurrier was so good for the sport of college football. Love him. He was tremendous at South Carolina. Like I said, what was he? 80, 86 and 49. But getting a program to relevancy, by the way, is what he did, doesn't equate to having statues built because you took them to relevancy. It doesn't equate to having statues built of yourself.
Yeah.
It takes more than that. And that's why it's so hard.
I'm not calling out JD for this, so don't take it the wrong way. He said Steve Spurrier spanked Dabo's ass for a while he was at South Carolina. That is true.
He did.
That to me says that Gamecock fans, and he's not the only one who brought up this point. Somebody else did at some point. I know I saw it. That to me says you're so fixated on your rival that beating Clemson 5 times gets somebody a statue.
And he was 6-4 against Clemson.
Yeah.
Which is good, but
yeah,
6-4.
Nick Saban got a statue. Dooley got a statue. Spurrier doesn't get a statue. What this reeks of, and if we weren't talking about Don Staley getting a statue, then we definitely wouldn't be talking about. Yeah, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So something about that kind of it turns the conversation into whataboutism. Well, what about Steve Spurrier? Doesn't Steve Spurrier get one? Don Staley gets one. That to me says you feel a little icky looking at a statue of a championship winning woman. Yeah. And there's something in your psyche that says, well, a man's got to get one too.
Let's go to the text line. A lot of text to get to at 844-FAN-PHONE. Texter from the 473. This is Tolo Panther Boy. He says, I know this will be an unpopular response, and I love Spurrier, but the difference is Don won multiple SEC championships and Patties and Natties, I think is what he meant. He didn't, and he quit midseason in his final year. Again, that comes from Tolo Panther Boy. This comes from, I believe, JD. Anyone who says Spurrier deserves a statue probably agrees with Shedeur Sanders' jersey being retired. One SEC East title doesn't equate to a statue. I agree with that, JD, as well. Like he says, what are we even talking about? Tiger Pal Rachel says Diesel is right. Dawn, absolutely yes. Spurrier, no way. Plus, he quit on them midseason. Jersey Joe says, reminds you that Bud Kilmer, coach of the West Canaan Coyotes, had a statue of himself. Thanks for that, Jersey Joe.
He also shot cortisone into players' knees at halftime.
515 says Spurrier is a douche and has done nothing but suck. He stunk up the NFL and came back and sucked in college again. That comes from Eric Hines on the text line. Texter from the 490. He wasn't good on clock management in the Tennessee game. Well, one game. Let's criticize him for one game. Rick and Greer says Spurrier doesn't deserve his own toilet paper. Another texter from the 783, just all caps, stop. No, I think everybody pretty much is on the same page except for Tom and except for the thousands of people who were on Twitter yesterday talking about this. The Spurs Up Show on YouTube. Good to see you on the YouTube stream. He says Spurrier doesn't deserve a statue. And again, I do appreciate our Tolos on this show, Diesel, because pretty much everyone on the same page except for Tom in Somerville yesterday. And I know we had to cut Tom a little bit short because it was Overreaction Monday and there was several callers lined up. But just getting a program to relevancy doesn't equate to being remembered forever as one of the all-time greats. Here's the problem. If South Carolina football never gets back to relevancy, which, by the way, they already have in my mind under Shane Beamer, if they never go any further than relevancy, Diesel, guess what? They're always going to point back and look back and say, well, Spurrier deserves a statue.
Yeah.
However, if they turn that page and turn that corner and start competing for SEC championships again, guess what? This conversation will be long forgotten because they'll be relevant. They'll be competing for SEC championships, and winning them is what gets you competing for them, in my mind, doesn't get you a statue. You got to win them.
This is such a soft, everybody gets a trophy world. I mean, everybody gets a statue now. A trophy is easy. It's something you go down to the local trophy shop and you can buy 10 of them for $100. Now you want a statue that costs thousands of dollars, months to design and sculpt and put up. Come on, people. What are we talking about here? Statues for somebody who competed for a conference title once? Give me a break.
Go back to the phone lines at 844-FAN-PHONE, 844-326-3663. Guy wants to chime in. What's up, Guy?
Hey, I would not, I don't support a statue for him, but I do support a book of quotes.
Yes. Yes, that's the best thing anybody said today.
But I do support a book of quotes.
Guy, you still there?
Yep.
Sorry, we got a crazy echo.
Yeah,
on
turn
you,
your
Guy.
radio down, Guy.
Do us a favor, turn your radio down.
Turned it off, sorry.
That's all good.
So, book of quotes. What's your all-time favorite Spurrier quote?
I mean, it was just about anything with Georgia, wasn't it?
Oh, the old line. I always love playing Georgia early in the season because 3 or 4 of their players are going to be suspended.
Georgia, wasn't it? That was one, but just about every year he had one, didn't he?
He always had some really
had
good
quips.
quotes. Thanks for the call, Guy. We appreciate
you,
it. This one's my favorite, Diesel, from Steve Spurrier.
I tell you what, we had another sorry practice today. These guys, I don't know if we're going to be able to beat anybody this year. Quarterbacks, they can't hit the broadside of a barn right now. I don't know if we could hit that indoor facility right there. Receivers, they couldn't catch a cold if it was the middle of February, dropping everything. defensive backs, gosh, I wonder why they got grass stains all over the jerseys. They fall about every play. About 2 or 3 of them are falling. And our kickers, gee, it's like the Army, left, right. They're kicking it all over the place. I don't know if we can beat anybody this year. Guys, and leadership, we don't have any leaders out here. Guys are soft. They just can't. I don't know. Maybe I ought to give them a week off and start over and see if we can regroup and find some real tough guys.
That's my favorite.
You know what's crazy is nowadays he'd have to wait until after the portal window had closed before he made those statements. Otherwise, half the team would enter the portal. Coach says we're no good. We're out of here.
It's so good. And I think that's the one that Mark was referencing on Facebook. I think it is, Mark. That one's the best one ever. And again, I want to be very clear. I love me some Steve Spurrier. I miss him in the game. I think he was great for the sport of college football. It was entertaining every time he got behind the microphone. And what he did for South Carolina, look, Diesel, let's be clear. There are very few coaches, like none, who have ever done what he did for the program in terms of getting them to such relevancy so quick. But that in itself is different than the statue, the Mount Rushmore talk. I mean, look, we have that conversation a lot, right, about who should be on the Mount Rushmore. He was fantastic, but a point that's already been brought up, walking out on your team, that is a little bit of a red flag going against him in terms of getting a statue.
Yeah, I mean, Spurrier could have set that program up for the future. I mean, it didn't help what happened with Muschamp after that. He just wasn't the right fit, wasn't the right guy. You know, it took him a couple of years of that before finding who we can now all say is the right guy for South Carolina football. But truthfully, Shane Beamer hasn't won anything yet either. Right? Yeah, okay, yeah, he beat Clemson. Great. Does he get a statue too?
Famously, Garnett on Twitter says he made those statements to joke with the media. Didn't really say that in real time. We know that.
Well, that's fine.
We all know it was a joke. It was a funny joke. It was a really, really funny joke. But again, just talking about his quotes, he was the best.
Do you think he was serious about the coloring books at Auburn too? Like we know he wasn't serious about that. Famously, Garnett Sports. Let's see here. I don't get it. I don't get this push. Dawn Staley deserves it. Why can't we just admit that the deserving person is getting the trophy, the statue? I still think it's early for Dawn Staley, because what if she goes on and wins, 2 or 3 more national titles before she hangs it up? Wouldn't you say, well, Dawn Staley deserves a 10-foot statue instead of an 8-foot statue? Right? I mean, she still has the ability to add to her legacy. Steve Spurrier is and always will be known for being the head coach at Florida. He came back to the game. He brought South Carolina out of the dregs.
Yeah.
And made you a competent, relevant team for a couple of years. But unfortunately, the sad part is he did that for you when he was already in his 60s or 70s maybe at the time?
It was a retirement tour a little bit for Steve Spurrier.
If he had another 10 years in him, like if he was a 10-year younger coach and he had 10 more years to stay at South Carolina, maybe we're talking about a different story, but we're not.
We're not. But I'll tell you what we are talking. We are talking Carolina Panthers, Diesel. On the other side, Dan Morgan, the general manager of the Panthers, joins us next. Well, the dust has settled on the 2025 NFL Draft. We've broken it down as much as we can break it down, and we'll continue to do so right here on the Fan Upstate. But let's really hone in on your Carolina Panthers in this very segment as we're joined live by the GM of the Carolina Panthers, Dan Morgan. Dan, we appreciate you taking time to hop on with us. My first question for you is, did Bryce Young's improvement in your mind down the stretch of last season influence you to go wide receiver in the first round instead of defense, or was it simply just the best guy on the board at the right time of y'all's pick in the first round?
Yeah, I think I think it was really just about drafting the best players. And, I think the body of work that we did on Ted after interviewing him at the Combine, bringing him in for a 30 visit, a couple Zoom calls with him. I just think the more we got around him, the more, you dig into his tape and see what he can do on the field. We fell in love with him, and we knew he was our guy. And, I think you really start, playing head games, thinking somebody may, jump you and try to, pick them off in front of you. So we kind of kept it quiet, but, we felt really good about T-Mac the whole time, and we knew he was our guy.
Dan, this is Diesel. I appreciate you joining us on the show today. I remarked last year, sometime in the middle of those final 8 or 9 games, that Bryce Young really looked like he found his joy for the game again. You go back to the previous season, there were obviously times where he didn't look like he was having a lot of fun out there, but the last 8 or so games of last year, he was smiling. He was moving in the pocket. He seemed like he was having a good time again. Can you talk about his growth from his rookie season that didn't go very well for him to that last 8 or 9 games, and give us a sense of where his headspace is at right now, and your assurities to Panthers fans that level of joy and fun for the game is going to carry on into this season?
Yeah, I think obviously Bryce, he overcame a lot of adversity. It certainly didn't start the way that he had planned, and he'd be the first one to tell you that. But Bryce is a resilient guy. He's a guy that is super smart, super competitive, loves football, loves everything about it, loves the process. And we're super lucky to have him. I think he's in a great headspace right now, seeing him around the facility every day. He's really excited about the direction that the team's going. He's around his teammates, developing the bonds and chemistry that you need to, field a championship team. So yeah, he's doing great. We're really excited, not just about him, but the rest of the guys that we have in that locker room. So yeah, I think things are looking up. Now it's just about putting the work in, putting your head down and focusing on what you're supposed to, and going to win some games.
We're joined by the general manager of the Carolina Panthers live on the Fan Upstate, Dan Morgan. Dan, you said last year at some point during the offseason that you didn't know if the 2024 team had expectations, or if it was fair maybe to put expectations on that team. Now, because of what you've done in the draft and the offseason with roster improvement, what do you think the expectations should be for this 2025 team?
I think the expectations, they don't change on a yearly basis. We're always, our goal is to always win the NFC South, compete to have a home playoff game, and compete for championships. We want to bring winning back here. But it's going to, it's definitely a process, and it's something where we know we have to put the work in, and we're doing that. Whether it's the front office, whether it's the business side, and then obviously the players and coaches. So everybody, knows the mission, knows the goals that we have in front of us, and we're putting the work in as we speak.
Dan, there's been a lot made of incoming rookies' unpreparedness to be professionals. Tom Brady said what he said. Kurt Warner echoed that a little bit in this year's draft conversation, whether it's, not being able to grasp concepts as quickly, a lack of consistency because these guys are jumping from team to team to team via the transfer portal. Do you find that to be true in your experience in just the most general senses, or has that been way off from your experience?
I don't really buy into that. I think talking to a lot of these guys and interviewing them through the process, they're some really intelligent guys and guys that know football, know X's and O's. So no, I don't really buy into that. Will there be a learning curve, a new system, for them to learn? Yes. But, I think there's a lot of intelligent, young men out there. Especially, the guys that we interviewed, they're very knowledgeable, and, that's the guys that we drafted. I can really speak for them to say that, they all had a really good head for the game, and all guys that love football and are, they know the game.
Dan, when you look at what you guys did in round 2 and round 3, going edge in both rounds, I want to know from a general manager standpoint, when you evaluate these guys in the interviews that you were just talking about, how do you evaluate a guy on a player-by-player basis in terms of, okay, this guy's ready day one, kind of to Diesel's question, or this guy's going to be more of a project? How do you evaluate that, and what do you think about the two guys you got at the edge position in terms of whether they're game ready as soon as they step on the field for your Panthers or not?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, you got to watch the game tape. You got to see how they play, see their mentality out there, and then you kind of have to match it with your scheme and, what they would bring, to your particular scheme. So, I think when we looked at, when you look at Nick and when you look at Princely, they're two guys that played, high-level football at the SEC level, guys that have played in big-time games and have played big in those big-time games. So, we felt like these were two guys that could really come in, contribute right away, and help this team out.
Talking to Dan Morgan, general manager of the Carolina Panthers, wire to wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Restructuring some deals and getting some cap space, I'm sure is going to be a focus for you. I know it already has been, but continuing to be going forward. What's it like being in a room with a player that you really want to keep versus one that you wouldn't be so disappointed if you couldn't come to an agreement with, when the conversation centers around, hey, we'd love to keep paying you what we're paying you, but this franchise really needs to win, and shaving some money off of your deal is really how we do it. What's that like?
Yeah, I think in those type of situations, you obviously develop, relationships, with these players. So, anytime, you choose to whether move on from a player or ask them to take a pay cut, it's never an easy thing. Because again, there's the human element to it, and we're all human, and, we do have emotions, and, we get close to guys, and the guys get close to you. You get to know their family. So yeah, that's definitely the downside to my job and to the business.
Hey, Dan, can you go a little bit more in depth on what you guys love so much about Ted McMillan? Obviously, it surprised some Panther fans when you guys chose Ted. A lot of people thought you might go defense there in round 1. From your time, the time you spent with him and others within your staff, the time spent with Ted McMillan, what was it that really, it can be on the field or off the field, that you guys really loved about McMillan?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of both. I think spending time with them at the combine, and then, bringing them in person on a 30 visit to Charlotte, just getting to know him, getting to know, the guy and his, his background, his family life, where his love of football came from. It's just kind of cool, like hearing everybody's story. And, Ted is just such a great kid, super smart in terms of X's and O's on the football field. So yeah, I think, when you match that, and you feel good about the person, and then you turn the tape on and you see the frame, you see the body control for being such a big guy, his ability to get in and out at the top of routes. And I don't know that I've saw him one time catch the ball with his body. You know, he catches everything outside his frame. He's got some of the most natural hands that I've seen from a receiver in a long time. And then, you know, I think just his big play ability down the field, ability to win the 50-50 ball. And then, you know, he's a big time threat in the red zone as well. So there's a lot of things to like about him. You know, no receivers, you know, a finished product when they come in. And, you know, I know T-Mac knows that, you know, he's going to have to come in, put the work in and prove to his teammates, you know, that he's ready to be on the field with them, which I know he will.
Dan, what do you remember from your draft day, and how much fun is it to be able to pass that experience along to the next group of guys year in and year out?
Yeah. You know, I think from my draft experience, you know, I think it was pretty similar, you know, just kind of, it's funny interviewing a lot of these guys and, you know, you see them sitting across from you and, you know, I remember doing that too. You know, you're answering all these different questions, you know, that these franchises have for you. They're about to invest millions of dollars into you. But I think when you're that age, you're not thinking in that sense. You know, you're just answering questions and you're just trying to move from one interview to the next. So, you know, I think I just kind of put myself in their shoes and I know what they're going through. So I think it helps me in that aspect. But yeah, it's one of those things where you're glad the process is over, which I'm sure, you know, a lot of the guys that we drafted are glad it's over and they're just ready to play football now. So, yeah, I think it's definitely a challenging experience for these guys.
Dan, kind of a follow-up question to that, a fun one for you. You know, when you go into a job interview, you're always asked one question that's just so random. You didn't expect that. When you interview players, do you have one of those questions you ask that kind of catches them off guard?
You know, I usually just try to like ask like, you know, questions about just like where their love of football came from. You know, what do they like most about the game? And then it's also, you know, a self-awareness thing, you know, tell me about your strengths, tell me about your weaknesses. And, you know, it's nice to know, you know, that a guy, you know, you don't want them saying, I don't have any weaknesses, because we all have weaknesses. So it's nice to know the self-awareness of some of these guys to come into a room and be vulnerable, you know, with a bunch of guys sitting staring at them. So, yeah, it's definitely a fun part of the process, you know, for me, just to kind of get to know these guys.
Well, Dan, a follow-up to a follow-up, and this is how weird our web stream live chat is right now. One of our listeners wants to know, if you were in a wrestling match with a silverback gorilla, who would win? And that feels like one of those weird questions that you might have been asked during your draft process. But to your point of what you were just saying about, you know, players who are willing to self-assess their own weaknesses, you know, there's been a lot of conversation over the past couple of days about Jalen Milroe giving basically a book on all of the things that he needs to work on. If you're sitting in that meeting, if you're in that room when he gives that answer, is that a positive in your mind, a guy who knows exactly what he needs to work on?
Yeah, I definitely, you know, I think the self-awareness part is huge, because, you know, I think once you know your weaknesses, then you can really start working on your strengths. You know, you can start working, you know, to make that a strength, I should say. So, yeah, I think that's a big part of growing, gaining knowledge and just getting better, you know, not only as a player, but as a person.
Dan, we so much appreciate your time today. Thanks for hopping on with us. Our audience has thoroughly enjoyed it, and we'll do it again soon. Best of luck this season, and congratulations on your 2025 draft.
Appreciate it, guys. I'll be on anytime.
Thanks, Dan.
Dan Morgan, the general manager of the Carolina Panthers. Fantastic stuff there. Even got the silverback gorilla reference in. Was that from Matt Kraft?
I think it was Matt Kraft, and he's like, oh, no, you asked the question wrong. If it's 100 Dan Morgans versus one, so come on, guys. Like, be happy that I even mentioned your stupid question.
I was going to say, you better be glad Diesel mentioned your question, because guess who wasn't going to ask y'all's questions? It was me. I wasn't going to do it, so I'm glad Diesel did. So yeah, don't shoot the messenger there. Look, really good stuff. I think we're going to spend a segment in the 5 o'clock hour for a new audience that we have, you know, at 5:20, kind of breaking down what Dan Morgan had to say, but. You know what? It really does sound like Diesel from what you heard. And from what you can kind of pick up on from other interviews that Dan Morgan's done, that this hire of Dan Morgan, for as much credit or for as much crap as we give Dave Tepper, I think at the same time we have to be really fair and say, you know what, the hire of Dan Morgan, I don't want to say has saved the franchise, but when you look at what Carolina's doing, people think this is a microwave society where you throw it in, hit 2 minutes, and it's done. I just think that Dan Morgan 110% knows what it takes. He's played the game. He knows what it takes to get this franchise back. It's not going to happen overnight. I just think a lot of credit goes to the hire of Dan Morgan, getting the right guy in, because we talk about it all the time with the Cowboys and other teams in the NFL that their GMs kind of just make boneheaded decisions, right? You scratch your head. I really like what Dan Morgan's done.
They had that guy in Scott Fitterer, and Scott Fitterer over-leveraged and put out some gigantic contracts and put Dan Morgan in such a hole. And that's why that's his job right now, is to undo all of the terrible contracts from the Scott Fitterer era. We saw it last year with a lot of the contract restructuring. And I certainly wouldn't want to be in the room with a guy that you really like, a guy that you really want to keep on your roster, but you know you're going to offend him by saying, hey, can we get you to take $1 million less? Or can we get you to take $5 million less? Wouldn't it be more fun to get paid $5 million less and be on a winning team? That's what we want out of you. We want you to be a team player, reduce your contract by $5 million so that we can go out and get another great receiver or a blocker or whatever it may be. Can you help us out on that? Because, I mean, these guys, at what point does the money not really matter anymore? That's what I always want to know. And I'll never experience that. I'll never know what that's like to say, hey, I'm making, $50 million on this contract. What's the difference between $50 million and $40 million to me? Really?
You don't make $50 million now?
Do you?
Oh, I thought we all.
Because I know Madcraft does. He's the richest one in the group.
You know what? I do want to bring up.
That's how he can afford to be here every day.
Right. JD said it could have happened overnight if they took 2 defensive ends early like Atlanta did. I don't agree with that. JD, number one, they didn't have 2 picks in the first round. Number 2, just because you take 2 defensive ends that are highly touted doesn't mean your franchise is going to turn around overnight. I don't buy that philosophy whatsoever. I think Dan Morgan 100% knows the right way to build a franchise. And if you've watched NFL football, if you're a football guy, Diesel, you know that, you can buy championships. The Rams did that, and it lasted 1 year. But you also know that building a franchise takes time. Look what Howie Roseman's done in Philadelphia, right? I mean, look at what the great GMs in the game, the great owners in the game have done. It does take time. Yes, you have to be active in free agency. Yes, you have to draft the right guys, but I do like what the Panthers did last year and this year in the draft, getting Leggett, now getting Ted McMillan. I think I know Panther fans don't want to hear this, but you have to be patient, man. You can't expect this thing just to be fixed overnight.
Look, am I shocked and surprised that the Panthers didn't do what we all thought they were going to do and go defense, elite defensive edge in the first round? Yeah. But do I love Ted McMillan as a wide receiver and think that he could be a true number one for this franchise, which they haven't had in a long time? Yeah. And do I think that being the number one also helps out Xavier Leggett be a really good number 2? Yeah, I do. So I think it was a really smart play. It subverted a lot of expectations, but it was a really bright decision. If I could have asked him one more question, I would have said, did Bryce Young tell you to draft Tetero McMillan? Did he see this guy's game and say, you know what, that's the kind of guy that I would vibe with? I just wonder if current players, franchise quarterbacks, get to put in their 2 cents. When we come back, I know this is kind of a knee-jerk segue, but with the Carolina Panthers not having had the tremendous amount of success over the past 10 seasons, I beg you, what would you give up the Carolina Panthers for? That conversation is next. Coming up in the next segment, I'm going to test Cole Bryson's ability to guess the list prices for sports memorabilia on Facebook Marketplace. And man, I've got a crazy one for you that I think you may rush out and buy. That's why you may want to know about this one, because you may rush out and buy it. But in this segment, Cole, I want to test the Carolina Panther fans in the audience, because I know that Carolina, while it is not 100% of the audience, Carolina Panthers fans, I do know that a good majority of our listening audience would count Carolina Panthers as their number one NFL team. But they haven't been very good over the last 10 years or so.
You don't say.
They haven't been very good. So I'm going to propose a swap, and I want you to tell Tolos to tell me if you would take this deal, okay? So you got the Carolina Panthers. It's an NFL franchise. NFL is king. I get that. They generate a ton of revenue. They make a lot of money for the city of Charlotte and the region as well. But again, they haven't been good. 31-70 since David Tepper took over. Bear all that in mind. Could I get you to give up the Carolina Panthers for a good Major League Baseball team in the city of Charlotte? So I know that a lot of you Tolos love baseball. Baseball is probably your second sport behind football in totality. A Charlotte team, though, would compete with the Braves for the hearts and minds of upstate South Carolina baseball fans for generations. If I'm telling you, if I'm promising you that this is a playoff caliber team more years than not, 6 out of 10 years, you're going to the playoffs, baby. Would you give up the Carolina Panthers to get a Charlotte Major League team?
That one's tough. I will say,
I know.
Number one, I'm not a Panthers fan. Number two,
pretend
I'll pretend for a moment that I am, and I'll answer by saying no because of my allegiance to the Braves. I've been a Braves fan my whole life, and I would not want to have to choose between the Braves and the Charlotte.
Let's call them the Knights. Let's just pretend for a moment that the Knights,
they do have
a AAA team.
AAA team. Yeah, I would say no. If I were a Panther fan, I would say no because football is number one. Football is king. The NFL is king. Like it trumps everything. Everything. Even when other sports try to trump the NFL, it always wins. There's just something about the NFL. I love baseball. I love the Braves, but I would not want my fandom, my allegiance to the Atlanta Braves to have to be maybe split or even wavered on because of this team in Charlotte. So I don't want to speak for the Panthers fan base, but I would say no to that. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it.
844-326-3663. Tolos, text in on the Hub City Spartan Burgers text line, 844-FAN-PHONE. That's phone spelled with an F. If I could take away all the pain and heartbreak of being a Carolina Panther fan and give you a good Major League Baseball team in the city of Charlotte, would you take it? On the stream, goodness gracious, you guys are going nuts on the stream over there. Dan B says, do they really make the city a lot of money? Well, Dan, the organization itself, just the Carolina Panthers organization, generated $575 million in revenue last year. 575. That's just the team. Then you got to think of all the revenue that you generate in restaurants and parking fees and hotels and everything else involved. Alcohol sales around the city of Charlotte. It's probably, if you'd have to find much smarter people than I, economists, to really give you a sense of how big the Carolina Panthers economy is in the city of Charlotte, but they do generate a lot of money. JD Wyatt says, no, I wouldn't trade my Panthers fandom for an MLB team in Charlotte. I'm already a Braves fan. Let's see. Madcraft says it would take 30 years to gain fan traction. Cole is right. All us Braves fans would literally have to pass. Well, that's true. That would be, I'll bet you that's one of the biggest reasons why Major League Baseball doesn't seriously consider the city of Charlotte for an expansion franchise, because they just know that this team would struggle to get fans for the first couple of generations.
Yeah. Real quick before we go to the phones,
what if they were better than the Braves? What if they were better?
I will say, I do want to say, I don't think Charlotte gets enough credit for being as unwavering as a sports city as they are. Charlotte is a great sports city that has endured bad teams, like really bad teams. So
Hornets have sucked.
The Hornets
for a
have
long
sucked.
time.
The Panthers hadn't been good. Charlotte's a great sports city. Just look what happened when they had Cam and the Panthers were good. Let the Charlotte Hornets get good. They would be stupid. Real quick, let's go to the phone lines. Sam wants to weigh in. What's up, Sam?
So I have to disagree with your last point. Charlotte is a terrible sports city. After living there for 10 years, you couldn't get fans to stay for a whole game.
Because of why, Sam?
Well, they're mostly transplants. There's no true Carolina fans there. They're always there for Pittsburgh or Dallas or
the product
or the Patriots
sucks.
or whoever.
Yeah, they don't stay because the product on the field isn't very good.
Sure, but true fans are going to go no matter what. I mean, you look at the Gamecocks and they went defeated. They would still have plenty of fans there.
I don't know, man. Like, I just know a lot of Panther fans, Sam, who, and again, like, you go look at the attendance for the Hornets. Like, people are there. I know it's not sold out every night, but these organizations in Charlotte stink. They're not any good. I think so.
Well, let me ask you this question. I don't necessarily like Diesel's question. It's a fine question. But what if we swapped out Charlotte for something in the upstate? Greenville, Spartanburg, Anderson. What if we got a pro team playoff caliber in our area versus having to travel to Charlotte where we already have mediocre teams?
The reason I don't bring that up, Sam, is because every time I've brought up the realities of trying to get a highest level pro team in the city of Greenville, the largest market in the largest state in the union that doesn't have a pro team, the backlash that I get every single time is we don't want the traffic. We don't want the extra people. We don't want to have to build the extra infrastructure. We don't want it. That's why I didn't bring Greenville into this.
Well, newsflash to those people, we're already getting those people. We're already getting the traffic. So why not at least get the benefit of the team?
Hey, Sam, thanks for the call, man.
Thanks, Sam. I think if the Carolinas were to ever get a major league team, it's going to Raleigh. It's going to Raleigh because those people up there actually support their teams. They have NHL in Raleigh, and it sells out every single night. The city of Raleigh,
and they're really good,
is the future home for a Major League Baseball team in the Carolinas if there ever was going to be one. When we come back, Cole, on the other side of the break, Marketplace Monday, I'm going to throw a stumper at you, see how close you can come. That's next. The value of anything is what someone is willing to pay you for it. Shedeur Sanders certainly found that out when people discovered, and he discovered that people are not willing to pay you top dollar for your services and everything that comes with you. See, that's what a lot of people who have been up in arms about Shedeur dropping to where he dropped, they're like, well, he's a talented quarterback. He's a talented quarterback. Yeah, he's a talented quarterback. But the draft is full of talented quarterbacks. I mean, Jackson Dart was great at Mississippi, at Ole Miss. And Cam Ward was great at Miami. And Dylan Gabriel was great at Oregon. You're not getting into the NFL draft if you're not a great player, right? They're all great players coming out.
Yeah.
It's all of the other tertiary things that bring down your value. And so reportedly, Cole, he lost $44 million in career earnings.
Shedeur did.
Just by falling from the first to the fifth.
Yeah, I believe it. Also, before we get into Marketplace Monday, I did want to bring up, Diesel, a little bit of breaking news about 30 minutes ago from famously Garnet Sports, who was just in our chat, in our stream not long ago, where you can watch the show live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. About 33 minutes ago, while we had Dan Morgan on the show, breaking news for South Carolina basketball that Cam Scott has withdrawn from the transfer portal and will return to South Carolina. Again, famously Garnet broke that. It came from, I believe, Scott's Instagram. So if you wanted to be able to have a guy back, Diesel, on your roster who maybe has something to prove because of this season, a pretty big announcement to keep Cam Scott in Columbia for the Gamecocks.
Either that or the Garnet Trust scratched together some money. Yep. They shook out the couch cushions and they said, hey, we got a competitive offer for you. Would you mind coming back? So, Cole, let's I always love doing this because, number one, you never know what's out there and available that people are selling unless you go looking for it.
You never know.
Number two, you never know what exorbitant prices people are willing to ask for some of the things that they're trying to sell. So we had a really stacked show yesterday. We didn't get a chance to get to this segment, which we like to do on Mondays. So let's do it today. Marketplace Monday on a Tuesday, Cole. Let's start with this one. It's a very simple one. I think you should have a chance to get very close to this, okay? Real easy. Ease into it. A set of 2 Boston Braves Babe Ruth bobbleheads still in the box. Both of them still in the box. Obviously, they were doing bobblehead day back in the 20s, so these are vintage.
Ooh.
Kidding. They're not. They're new. Well, they're new in box. I don't know when they actually released them, but they are new in box items.
And it's Babe Ruth?
Babe Ruth, Boston Braves.
There's 2 of the same one.
2 of the same one.
Side by side, boxed up.
Not autographed, obviously.
Not autographed. It'd be an old autograph, right?
Yeah,
they 2 Babe Ruth bobbleheads. Babe Ruth.
And they're not Yankee bobbleheads.
Not yet. No, that's what's interesting about that,
that's
right?
What makes them fun.
You would think it'd be Yankee bobbleheads. For 2 of them, I feel like I'm going to be way off here, but I'm going to go $225.
You are way off.
Way low,
way high.
Oh wow!
Way
so they would take
high.
that offer, is what you're saying?
Oh God, yeah. They would come over and shake your hand, maybe mow your lawn, do your dishes for that price.
$40.
Oh, you're $50.
$50.
$50. It's obviously a new production item. There's nothing of historical value to this, but I mean, a lot of items you just attach the right name to it, and the value goes up for no reason.
That's why I thought it would be more because it was Babe Ruth. I was way off there. One texter said 75. One said bobbleheads for 40 a piece. And again,
you get a deal with this 2 for 50.
Can you autograph a bobble? I'm looking at those over there on the wall, though. I guess you could autograph.
Well, you can autograph the box.
The box.
You could. I mean, technically, you could autograph the bottom, the underside of the base.
Yeah. Not their bottom, but the bottom.
Yeah, because I mean, we have a Sammy Sosa over there. We have Rafael Palmeiro. We have a Randy Johnson. The base is small, so you'd have to have a teeny tiny pin to autograph.
My
the
favorite
top
is
of the base.
the Wofford one over there with Ingles Markets on it.
I'm partial to the Dick Vitale only because when the battery was new, it would have play catchphrases.
Yeah, Dickie V. That's a good one. Dick
But
Vitale.
Boss is really cool. I like it.
Yeah, hard to beat that. Let's see. Kevin on the Hub City Spartan Burgers text line says, I'm your memorabilia expert.
Interesting.
Well, why is that, Kevin? Are you just a good guesser?
Kevin, we need you to call into the show and be a part of the segment. How about that? You call in right now. We'll get you on the line, and we'll let you play along live, Kev.
Oh, he's not that kind of expert.
844-326-3663.
I'm an expert, but I don't want to call on the show. All right, mine for you, Diesel.
Okay.
On this Marketplace Monday on a Tuesday, we have an authentic NFL Tom Brady signed, framed photo and jersey, full-size jersey in a big frame. I don't know if it's game worn. Let's see the description. Brand new, great gift, authentic, very large glass frame, 34 by 42, large frame jersey and pick, signed, authentic.
So
it doesn't say if it's game worn, but it's hard to tell. Now,
what exactly is signed? Is it the picture that's signed? Is it the jersey that's signed, or both?
It's the one on the 12. So you have number 12. It's a Bucks jersey, right? Tampa Bay Bucks
jersey. Okay.
Yep, and it's red in color. It has a picture of him in the white 12 below it, but the jersey is signed on the number 1. You see his autograph, and then the picture is him with a good old fist pump. So on the back of the frame, it has the certificate of authenticity, and it says the certificate of authenticity is your assurance that the accompanying item of memorabilia was signed by the person.
Here's the scary thing about autographed numbers on jerseys. Because I know they do this, that that jersey may have never actually been in Tom Brady's hands. He may have signed the number, and then they stitched the number onto the jersey after the fact. I don't know the answer to that question here. I'm going to say a Brady autographed red Bucks jersey, numbers autographed. There's a photo below it in a frame. I'm going to say this item is listed for $450. Oh.
Way off.
Way high or way low?
Way low.
What?
Yeah, let me get this.
450
Guess
is
again.
Way low? I mean, come on. He's still alive. He's still signing stuff. Like, the rarity is what makes things worth money.
Yeah.
450 is way low. Do we have
450? Kevin.
Oh, it's Kevin.
Was texting in on the show. He is on the phone lines. Kevin, you there, man?
I am here.
What's up?
Well, first of all, who is the certificate of authenticity?
Okay, that's a good question, right? That matters.
See, he's peeling back the layers of the onion here.
All right. It says it on here. The certificate of authenticity, Kevin, is it says, okay, I'm going to read it to you, okay? The certificate of authenticity is your assurance that the accompanying item of memorabilia was signed by the person or persons represented. The authenticity of this item is guaranteed by Total Sports Ltd. That's what it says.
Stay away from it.
I
can write one of those. and sell it to you. But his last time Tom Brady did a signing, it was a $1,200 minimum. Now the prices went up for jersey or if it was a ball. And his autograph just keeps on going higher and higher.
Really?
The bobbleheads, the bobbleheads, those are made to a certain sometimes they're made to a limited number, which makes the prices go up higher. But those are just generic giveaways.
Sure.
We'll resell them for $40 a piece.
So what's your best guess on this, Kevin? By the way, it's on Facebook Marketplace.
Yes.
So
we're asking what it's not what it's worth, what it's listed for.
I would say he's probably asking about $1,600.
Too high. Too high. Yep.
Too high.
Too high.
So like $1,000?
$950.
Well,
$950.
Well, it's
Kevin.
probably fake.
So
Okay.
Kevin, see, he's peeling back the layers of knowing the companies whose certificates of authenticity you can trust.
Right. So how Kevin, in your mind, like from you on the text line saying that you're the memorabilia expert, do you buy a lot of do you sell a lot of memorabilia? How are you the expert on this?
I'm just joking around by saying I'm an expert, but I'm pretty knowledgeable. But it started with collecting cards with my dad as a kid for baseball. I'm a Tigers fan, and back in 2016, I kind of got. Hey, we're in first place
now.
Yeah, but I just got back into it back in 2016, and cards went to autographed baseballs, to jerseys.
Yeah.
It's just the collection. It's addictive.
Do you still get the
Once you
catalogs?
get started, everyone.
Kevin, do you still get the catalogs of items and kind of get a good sense of what market value should be on these things?
No, I'm in a couple of Facebook groups, and it's just the people that run them are very reputable. They've been around for years. They've had their own
that's
shops.
smart.
And
So
then there's
let me
also
ask you
people
this
that-
question real quick, Kevin. In terms of buying memorabilia, sports related, is it better to buy it from a group rather than on Marketplace?
Yes.
Okay. That makes sense.
So you're saying you should basically
Because-
never buy marketplace items.
I rarely ever buy marketplace items.
Wow.
That's fair.
How about that? Kevin, where are you calling from, man?
Lyman.
Lyman. Appreciate you. Hey, thanks
maybe
for the call,
maybe
Kevin.
he knows the leprechaun of Lyman. I
Maybe
don't
he
know.
does.
I don't
Maybe
know.
maybe not. Leprechaun's pretty secretive in Lyman. Appreciate Kevin. You know what though? That's one thing that I never got into. Like I had baseball cards growing up. I just never really got into it because I have heard. I used to listen to a guy in Dallas. He played for the Rangers, Mike Batchick. He was the card guru. And I've heard from him and other people that it is very addictive. I never got into it though.
So I'm gonna throw a bone out here to our friend Wrestling Sucks on the stream. This is for you, Kane, and I know who you are. This is specifically for you. I put this together for you.
Oh, is that Kane?
I want you. He wouldn't admit it, but I'm pretty sure it is. I want you to give me an answer on this. What would you pay for this item? Wrestling Sucks. A WWE Ric Flair belt and robe. So this is a full-sized wrestling belt dedicated to Ric Flair. It comes in a diamond-shaped wood display case that, according to the seller, weighs about 40 pounds. There's a script on the underside of the lid that says "Diamonds are forever, and so is Ric Flair." How do you take this stuff seriously? It's in a foil script across the lid. The belt just, has Ric Flair on the main part of the belt. If you flip it over and you look at the back side of the belt, it's made of leather. It has his famous quote, "I'm Ric Flair, the stylin', profilin', limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing son of a gun," inside of the belt. So it's a belt that comes in a very special, and it looks nice. It's not my cup of tea, but I mean, what do you think? Wrestling Sucks on the stream and Cole that this item is listed for on Facebook Marketplace.
There's oh my gosh. I'm gonna be way off on this one. So again, it's the belt and the robe.
It's a belt and a robe. Belt and a robe.
Flair.
It looks nice. I mean, it looks well crafted. I don't know who made it though.
$90.
That's when you get a no lowball offers. I know what I've got messages.
More than 90 for.
See, he's so busy arguing with Madcraft about their underwear that he can't even answer the question.
So
we're talking about wrestling for you,
and
you're not
was
paying
way
attention.
You know what? They're in another world
Yeah,
on the
they
stream.
are.
Like they
probably have us muted.
I think sometimes they do mute us, and they have their own conversations. So 211 right now watching.
You're gonna have to go up if you want to get this item.
Can I multiply 90 by 2 and get closer, or am I still way
No,
off?
you cannot.
Oh my word! All right, let's try this.
Cannot.
Let's multiply.
Tolos, do you have any guesses? 844 fan phone.
If we take the 90 and multiply it by 5 to get 450, is that better?
You're still low.
Oh my god! For
You're
a
still
robe,
low. For a robe and belt.
a robe and belt.
This is for if you buy this, if you spend the money on this, there is a 1,000% chance that you're going to wear this thing, right? Like there's 1,000% chance that you're going to put on a blonde wig and some stupid sunglasses and prance around in your little robe and your belt and be like, "Oh, I'm Ric Flair."
Is Dewey the one selling this? Is it Dewey? Nah, I really don't. $450's low. 620.
$650.
Oh my god.
$650 for crying
Why
out
do
loud.
this
Who's
thing?
going to buy this thing? An idiot. An idiot would buy this thing.
That's crazy. That is a lot. Somebody will, though. Somebody will. Scotty from BMW wants to weigh in on the phone lines at 844-FAN phone. What's up,
Scotty
Scott?
doesn't know.
Hey, man, I was going to guess. I didn't hear it because I heard the wire-to-wire thing. I'm going to say it was $1,600.
That
For
was
the
your
Ric Flair
guess?
thing?
Yes.
You're
I'm just
way
taking a
high.
guess.
You're way high. And by the way, Scotty doesn't know is a quote from a movie. I'm not hating on you, Scotty.
Man, you know how many times I've heard that song?
I know you have.
And Scotty beat me up. Hey, I can go
Beat
buy
me up,
somebody some
Scotty.
drinks
Beat me
that
up,
much.
Scotty. Beat me up.
And Scotty's on fire.
Well, one last thing. Woo! Y'all have a good one.
Thanks, Scotty. It was way high. He left us with a woo.
Woo! That's expensive.
Man, that is that. And for those that didn't hear it, what was the final price on that?
$650.
$650.
$650. How is Rob Brown not already purchased this thing? That's what I want to know.
I've got one more for you. This is a Jackie Robinson framed portrait, and it has. Let's see here. It says. Let me read the description. Authenticity guaranteed. Jackie Robinson rare signature.
Oh.
Discounted due to faded tape autograph. It's also autographed by Tony Gwynn. The frame's included.
Wow.
So,
talk about an age difference there.
I know, but look, this thing's really, really nice. It's really nice. And it's a great picture of Jackie Robinson. It's not black and white, but like you said, it's faded. And again, it's autographed. But I will tell you this. It has significantly dropped from the original price the seller is asking.
I'm going to say this is listed for $500.
Too high.
Too high?
Yeah, too high. The original.
Oh, man.
The original, he would have he had laughed at you. But the new offer.
So what was it originally?
$1,100.
$1,100. That still seems low for a Jackie Robinson autograph. If a Tom Brady is going for $1,000 or more,
I don't think it's real.
$100.
$300 is
$300.
the current asking price.
Okay. Well,
$300.
My last one, Cole. This is the one. Don't ever let anybody tell you that we're not friends. Because I pulled this one. I did some research for you. Okay. This is it's a wooden plank. It's about 4 inches deep and probably about 1.5 feet long, with a row of figurines on it, made of basically the same material that the Wofford bobblehead over here is made of. But they're not bobbleheads, they're actual figurines of the 1977 Dallas Cowboys. This comes from Danbury Mint, which I've heard of that name before. I think that's the company that probably makes the figurines.
Okay.
It features 10 roughly 6-inch tall player and coach figurines: Billy Joe Dupree, Tony Dorsett, Drew Pearson, Roger Staubach, Tom Landry, Charlie Waters, Harvey Martin, Cliff Harris, Mel Renfro, and Randy White. All mounted on this wooden board. There's no blemishes. It looks beautifully made. And there's a tiny little plaque on it that says 1977 Dallas Cowboys.
That's tough. That's I like that one a lot. I really would like to have it sitting right over there.
I don't get a sense that it is itself vintage. I think it just harkens back to.
Does it look old though?
No, it looks fairly new.
Those are some big names. Like when you talk about Cowboys history, those are some of the biggest names,
and they were all on that team.
Tony Dorsett. Oh yeah, Tony Dorsett. That's tough. I'm gonna say how many total? 10
players.
10 players on the plank.
Yep.
I'm gonna guess $275.
You're way low.
Aww.
If you want this thing,
yeah.
Would you have paid $275 for it? How much do you love the Cowboys?
I don't know that I would pay $275.
Yeah, well, you're not getting it for whatever you're going to be able to offer.
$560.
You're still low.
Oh God,
$750.
No, not without any autographs.
That's like $75 per figurine.
That's the problem. Somebody can make those. I mean, somebody can make them.
I mean, if you could probably 3D print this thing.
Whew.
Again, without picking it up, you don't know if it's actual wood, if it's heavy,
man.
But I mean, it's a nice looking item. Like this would be a super fan item. It's just really expensive.
That's too expensive for me. Too expensive. Again, sounds awesome. Well, I just not. I wouldn't do $250.
Well, our boss is a Dallas Cowboys fan. Maybe y'all can pool your money together. You get it on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. He gets it on Tuesday, 50-50. Thursday, and Saturday. And then on Sundays, you trade it back and forth.
The days he's not here, I get it. How about that? Kevin on Facebook stream says, wait, you bust my – wait, what? I'm not – the wording on that's a little rough.
He says we're breaking his balls about being a Detroit Tigers fan, but you're a Cowboys fan. I'm the one who was breaking your balls about being a Tigers fan. Cole is the Cowboys fan.
That's right. Yeah. So, don't talk trash, Kevin. I didn't say anything about your Lions. I didn't say a single
shooting
thing.
At the wrong target.
That's Kevin. Right. That happened 2 days in a row. JD was shooting at me yesterday for something I didn't do. Today, Kevin's shooting at me for something I didn't do. Madcraft says, wrestling, just bear in mind. Oh, they're still going off about wrestling.
What
are they arguing about?
Those two need to get a private chat room.
They really, or get a room. How about
that too?
Or get a room. I want to remind you, Tolos, we have our daily wires coming up at 5:45. The top headlines in sports. 6 o'clock. We're going to do a baseball heavy segment titled Diamond Nuggets, just baseball. That's it for 4 hours. No, I'm kidding. For about 15, 20 minutes on the show. Diamond Nuggets coming your way at 6 o'clock. If you're a baseball fan, we'll talk Clemson baseball, South Carolina baseball, Braves baseball, the latest D1 college baseball poll. Stay tuned for that. Want to get our reactions and dive a little bit deeper into what Dan Morgan said on the show a few minutes ago, about an hour ago, actually, Diesel, and what the Panthers did in the draft. Dan Morgan joined us. If you just tuned into the show, if you missed it, number one, you can go back on the Odyssey app with a rewind feature and catch it right now. Number two, you can stick around. We will replay it for you in the 6 o'clock hour in case you missed it. But we'll give our thoughts on it and talk a little Panthers after the dust has settled next. Tolos, if you want to react, phone lines are open. Hub City Spartanburgers text line open as well. The phone number, if you haven't saved it in your phone, well, you need to do so. It's 844-FAN-PHONE. You call and text the same number. Again, that's 844-326-3663. Want to react to what Dan Morgan had to say as we had him on earlier in the show. Tolos, if you have thoughts on that, you can call or text the show. Obviously, you can't call the show when we have a guest on, so now's your opportunity to do that. Also, Diesel, before we dive deep into that, I want to point out that we talked about this 2 weeks ago when the news broke. Limestone University is having a board of trustees meeting tonight, and I know it's been covered heavily on the news stations all day long, but the final decision regarding Limestone has to happen today. There was a press release sent out last Tuesday that said the decision would be made no later than the 29th of April. Well, that's today. We've got the news stations on here in our studio. We know that News 4 has been there doing some live shots and live scenes earlier today. So if any information comes available, we'll pass it along to you. But we broke the news 2 weeks ago, Diesel, and Limestone thought they had a lifeline with some funding. We don't know if they've gotten the necessary funding. So maybe by the end of the show, but definitely tomorrow, we'll know the decision when it comes to Limestone University.
Yeah, I caught a little bit of this story on the news this morning. And what they had said on the news this morning was that they did receive a $1 million, I guess, promise. I don't know if they actually received the cash, but they did receive $1 million pledge from one. Now they were needing $6 million, and they were so that obviously falls dramatically short of what they needed. They had a couple of other locals who were willing to put some money down, including some local businesses to try to keep Limestone active, but they didn't sound this morning like they had the necessary funding.
Limestone 7. New 7 is there now. Let's see if we can get a quick look in.
By the Fullerton Foundation. However, the university
this
has
is live,
not
by the way.
disclosed the total amount raised, and students are feeling frustrated.
I wanted there to be a decision made so I knew what I could do moving forward, and there was just no decision. So it was just kind of like we're still stuck at what are we going to do?
I'm kind of hoping that they make a decision, and if they postpone it again, like I'm just going to leave and not stay.
You know, Diesel, that's going to be really tough. Let's see what Julia.
Transfer fair last Friday, where their students were able to meet with dozens of institutions, bracing for the fact that they may have no other choice but than to transfer.
So audio credit to WSBA 7 there. It's really tough to hear that, especially from students that they don't know. They haven't been told a decision, right? They don't. Yeah. They've got to know something. And that's the sad part.
Yeah, and with a lot of, with such a high percentage of Limestone student body being student athletes, I think 85%. I mean, some of which are on potential athletic scholarships. Sure. This may end some of their careers if they can't get on scholarship somewhere else. And it's a difficult thing to do because a lot of schools and a lot of programs are already fully booked or fully, staffed.
Yeah. They're full.
They're full.
No room here.
Full rosters. Yeah. They may not have places to go. And even then, they go somewhere. They may not be on scholarship again. They may have to pay their own way now. And that certainly hampers that. And it's not fair. It's not fair to the students who put their trust in Limestone University to be financially solvent, to maintain keeping the lights on.
And it's tough. I heard the same thing you did, Diesel, on the money that was raised. Look, we were told they needed $6 million to keep it open till the fall, right? They get $1 million. They also got the next day $100,000, which sounds like a lot of money. It's not when you're for a university.
Right.
So look, they've publicly released that they've raised 1.1.
Yeah.
And 1.1 to a university that's trying to stay open is kind of a drop in the bucket. They've got more money to be raised, and that's why it kind of seems like, to what you said a minute ago, from what you gathered on the news this morning, it kind of seems like, again, we don't know anything. We're not breaking any news, but it's going to be tough to keep the doors open.
Look, I know it would be devastating for Cherokee County. It would be devastating for Gaffney if this were to close. I mean, when we had on
Brock.
So yeah, Rep Brock, he was telling us about the economic impact of the university on Gaffney. But at some point, Cole, I mean, you can't let a struggling business live forever. You can't keep donating. You can't keep throwing, good money after bad money.
Sure. Yeah.
Can't
rob Peter to pay Paul.
How could you restructure the entire administrative side of the university to make sure that the money that we might be giving them doesn't just go to waste?
Madcraft on the YouTube stream, as he always does, drops just a big truth bomb and says, I have a lot to say about this, but doesn't say anything about it. So, Madcraft, if you have a lot to say about it, if you want to comment on Limestone University, the phone number is 844-326-3663. It would probably be wise to do that before we move on to a different topic.
Right now. Do it right now.
Or a different segment where we're doing the Daily Wires. If you have a lot to say,
don't do a Rick. Don't do a Rick. Don't call in to talk about school buses while we're in the middle of talking about something else.
That was 2 days in a row, wasn't it? With the first segment of the show, or was it?
We enjoy talking to Rick because you never know where Rick is going to go with anything. Except the one thing you do know is it's never going to be on topic. But no, this is a great opportunity to train the Tolos who may be thinking about anytime you're thinking about calling in, anytime you think you got something to say about a subject while we're on topic, that's the time to call.
The time.
Don't wait until we go to the next segment and then say, hey, can we go back to the previous segment? No, don't do that. Call in while we're on topic, and we would love to get you on at that point.
Madcraft found the number or found some
courage,
some minutes, courage, liquid, something. Madcraft said he wanted to comment on Limestone University and everything that's been going on. Madcraft, the floor is yours.
Hey, Cole, is this where you want to be when Jesus comes back, making fun of poor little Madcraft on the radio?
No. He talks like Joe Dirt. He kind of looks a little bit like Joe Dirt. It's incredible.
I love
the
it.
likeness.
I love it. I want to say Limestone, Limestone ain't the only school in the area that is dealing with some hardships like they are. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that right now. And another thing, too, it really frustrating to me, and this is coming from something that hit more closer to home, not directly in my family, but just, people that I know. Another thing that happens is when these coaches in some of these smaller schools, when they move just off the rip, sometimes right before a season starts or, they get a new job, whatever. When that happens, once scholarship money is thrown out and all of that happens, then all of these kids, all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, now I can't. It's basically the same thing that a lot of these kids are going on with Limestone right now. It's a whole situation of, well, they can't go anywhere else because a lot of these schools have already given out scholarship funds and they've already given out everything that they can. So unless that you can afford to pay everything that you need to, or you know what I'm saying, then you're not going to play anywhere else. And then I would ask, it's probably a small margin, but even these small schools, how much do their athletic programs, give revenue to these schools? Because imagine if all of a sudden, these smaller schools that have athletic programs, what if all of a sudden they don't? Because now they just can't physically get athletes to field teams.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'll say this, Madcraft, I don't feel bad for the people in the past who have made bad decisions, but I feel terrible for the staff who have had nothing to do with it and the students as well. I mean, it's just gut-wrenching. It absolutely is.
That's what I'm saying, though, is like if you go and you've got a perfect situation and everything's going to be great, but then all of a sudden this coach who, he said he was going to be there for a long time. And this happens all the time in college sports. I'm not saying that coaches shouldn't move, but I'm saying in some of these smaller settings, you're seeing it where coaches are literally, just right off the rip, like getting the whole team together and a whole bunch of recruits, and everybody's so excited and they give out all the scholarship money. And then the coach literally the next week is off to another state with another job. And then all of a sudden it becomes, okay, well, you're either in this position that you're in right now where we don't even have a coach. We don't even know if we're going to be able to actually compete without one because we only have 2 weeks to find one.
Yeah.
This is what some of these small colleges are doing. And I'm saying that is just kind of the same thing that some of these kids with Limestone are going through. And it's just not right.
No.
It's just weird. But anyways, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Thanks,
Anytime.
Matt Kraft. I wonder, Cole, and I understand that Limestone is a private university, and so that means they can't receive state funding. I'm shocked that, I mean, not that they can't, it's that they don't receive state funding. I'm surprised that we haven't heard that Limestone is petitioning the state for some kind of a grant. There's got to be a way, right? On top of that, maybe I'm surprised we haven't heard anything about Limestone trying to be absorbed by another university, whether it's another in-state private university, whether it becomes another satellite campus of USC Upstate or Spartanburg Community College or whatever it may be. I mean, I understand there's already a USC Upstate, so it wouldn't make sense. But I mean, it wouldn't make sense to have a USC Upstate campus in Spartanburg, but also have one in Gaffney too. But I do wonder if there would be an opportunity for it to merge with or be absorbed by another university. But then again, you're asking another university who may already be on thin margins to absorb and invest a lot of money in acquiring another university.
I'll tell you what, a lot of those questions have been asked of me. A lot of them, the questions you just asked, people have been asking me those same ones. I will say the last thing before we run to a break, Diesel, the hard part is great interview by WSPA 7 with that student. Hearing her, and we can't replay it because it was live, but hearing her say, look, try to make a decision here. We haven't been told anything. If it's been 2 weeks now. If this continues, I'm just going to leave. Like that's tough to hear. And I feel terrible for everybody there. It's tough.
I wonder if you're a student there, could you sue the university to get your money back? I mean, you promised me a 4-year education experience and you shut down after 2 years. Like you owe me half of my money back.
Probably ain't gonna get it.
No, I mean, there's not. Yeah, right. There's no funds to get it back, but I mean, it wouldn't be a position that you wouldn't come from a little bit of strength.
And just so you know, Tolo's out there. I did text back and forth a few minutes ago with Brock Cameron, who we had on a couple of weeks ago with the Cherokee Chronicle, that if there was any kind of breaking news, he would join us and relay that to us. So I was told the meeting's starting at 6, which is about 20 minutes from now, and a decision has to be made tonight, from what I hear.
When we come back, Cole, let's take our whip around the sports world, see what else is happening out there in our Daily Wires. A lot going on out there in the sports world. We wrap it all up in one tight little bundle called our Daily Wires. This is the buzz happening around the sports world. The Atlanta Braves defeated the Rockies by a score of 6-3 last night. They are now 13-15 on the season. They're coming back.
They're playing good right now.
Back.
I really, really, really needed the Braves to win last night. Really, really needed them.
Did you do well?
Atta baby. Really needed them to win. They were trailing when the game started by 2 or 3 runs. They came back and look, 2 games below 500 now. And tonight, again, Colorado's not really good, Diesel. And let's see who the Braves have on the mound.
Smith Schauber.
I like it. I think they might sweep this one.
There you go. Could be 14-15 later on this evening. Unfortunately, we won't be able to watch it because it's, of course, not on television. Sadly.
You gotta watch.
You got to pirate.
Watch.
You got to pirate.
Yeah.
Clemson baseball does not play this week. They are off. Do not have a midweek game, and maybe that's good. They can cool their jets a little bit after getting swept by NC State.
Yeah, tough weekend. You know what, though? I will say maybe that was a good thing for them. You don't want to go into the regionals without blemish, right? You want to be able to know where your strengths and weaknesses are, and maybe they can regroup this week.
South Carolina baseball, though, does have a midweek game. They'll host Charleston Southern tonight at Founders Park. First pitch just about 45 minutes away.
Yeah, they should win that one big. Should, keyword.
This one's a little bit of a head-scratcher. Basketball legend Shaquille O'Neal has agreed to become the men's basketball general manager of Sacramento State University. Sources have confirmed to KCRA3's Michelle Dapper. Sources say it will be a voluntary role for Shaq, so he won't be getting paid. Shaq, the champion, Shaq, the rapper, Shaq, the television show co-host, and now Shaq, the GM.
I'm confused a little bit on this, but
bold choice.
Okay, okay, Shaq.
I mean, I guess it remains to be seen. Might as well, if you're going to dabble at Sacramento State, not at like Stanford.
Yeah.
Or LSU. The San Francisco 49ers signed tight end George Kittle to a 4-year, $76.5 million contract extension, making him the highest paid tight end in NFL history. $40 million of that going to be guaranteed, and it'll keep Kittle with the 49ers through the 2029 season.
Big move. They need that. I think they had a really good draft. They need to bolster that defense and kind of rebuild it, but I do like that move.
Wyatt Johnson scored the quickest goal in NHL playoff history for the Dallas Stars. He led his team to a 6-2 victory over the Colorado Avalanche in Game 5. He scored his first goal last night, Cole, in 9 seconds. 9 seconds.
Wow. Scoring in 9 seconds. How about that?
Sounds like Madcraft's love life. Let's see. On Sunday, the Carolina Hurricanes beat the New Jersey Devils 5-2, and they now lead their series 3-1. Elimination game is tonight, 7:30 puck drop. Can I get you to watch the Hurricanes?
I do enjoy watching the highlights. I do enjoy watching the highlights.
Well, the problem is we don't know what network it's going to be on. It's still listed as TBD.
Yeah.
So we just don't know. Another pirated channel, I guess.
That's right.
Former Carolina Panther Deontay Johnson has signed a 1-year deal with the Cleveland Browns, making it his 4th team in a year. Since leaving Carolina, Deontay spent time with the Ravens, Texans, and now the Browns.
He's, what do they call it, a traveling man?
Troubled?
Okay, maybe so.
It's an interesting way to put it. Yeah. After meeting with President Trump, Rob Manfred said that he has plans to rule on the request that would end Pete Rose's permanent ban from Major League Baseball, though he did not give any specific timeline for when he would do so. Obviously, we know that Pete Rose was permanently banned in 1989 for gambling allegations. Pete had made several attempts to try to get reinstated or get his ban removed. They didn't do it while he was alive. He also said right before he passed, if you're not going to put me in, but while I'm still alive, don't bother putting me in at all.
You know what's going to happen? The worst thing, Diesel, that's going to happen if they do put him in, which I don't want him to.
Yeah.
This 100-year-long topic and debate will die. I mean, we've talked. People have been talking about this forever, and if they put him in, we won't be able to talk about it anymore. I don't want him to go in.
Well, look, I genuinely, if Rob Manfred feels like it's time and it's genuinely the way he feels and the kind of collective feelings and thoughts from baseball writers that it's time to end the ban, but don't do it because a politician asked you to do it.
Yeah.
Like that.
I don't think you should do it at all.
That doesn't set a good precedent that a politician can just come in and affect the policy decisions of major leagues in sports.
Don't do it at all.
This is a really odd one, Cole. A FIFA-funded study at Kingston University will investigate whether hormonal fluctuations during female players' menstrual cycles could be contributing to a rise in career-threatening knee injuries in women's soccer. Players like Beth Mead, Vivian Mamida, and Sam Kerr have suffered serious ACL injuries. This study is going to be led by PhD student Blake Rivers and will analyze blood samples to track hormone concentrations through menstrual cycles. The research aims to determine if athletes are more predisposed to injuries due to hormonal changes during menstrual cycles, specifically monitoring estrogen and progesterone levels. Inclusion in the study will be voluntary.
Yeah, I didn't have that on my bingo card today.
Look, is it potentially viable research? Yeah. Does that also mean that you may see star players sitting out of important games because they happen to be on their cycle right now? I don't know. I don't know if hardcore competitors are going to be willing to sit out. But hey, it is an interesting study to say the least. The Saints have released quarterback Ben DiNucci from their roster after adding Tyler Shuck via the draft. The room now includes Derek Carr, Jake Haener, Spencer Rattler, and Tyler Shuck. And we mentioned this earlier, based on where he was projected to go in the draft versus where he actually was picked, Shedeur Sanders lost. You can't lose what you didn't actually have. Approximately $41 million in career earning potential.
It's a lot of what if, right? A lot of what if. How about that?
Yeah, your average. They projected him to make $45 million on his second contract. A fifth round guy makes roughly $4 million on his second contract, but he still has the ability to play up to that big time contract. So everything is still in front of Shedeur. He could still go out and be a great quarterback in the NFL.
All right, baseball fans, it is time to do a baseball only segment. If you're a baseball junkie, this segment will be for you. It's titled Diamond Nuggets. You get it? Baseball field's a diamond. That's next.
Yeah, perhaps they will wait another hitter or so. Doesn't matter.
Eli White, deep to left, forget about it. The 8th inning has been the money inning for the Atlanta Braves, and it continues in Game 3 of the series.
Diesel, ever since the rain game, the Atlanta Braves have been spectacular. All they needed was a long-delayed game, a little rain, and here we are. The Atlanta Braves playing good baseball. Welcome into Wire to Wire. He sitting across from me in the final hour of the show, hour number 4, the Power Hour, is Diesel. I'm Cole Bryson. So good to be with you on this Tuesday, the final hour of the show, in a segment titled Diamond Nuggets, where we spend 15, 16, 17, maybe 18 minutes talking nothing but baseball. Braves, Clemson baseball, South Carolina Gamecocks baseball. Yes, they still have a team, and we'll look at the latest D1 college baseball poll, and that is where we start, Diesel, with the latest D1 baseball poll, where Clemson, after getting swept by NC State, dropped a spot. Texas, LSU, and Clemson round out the top 3. Maybe a little surprised that they didn't fall even further than that after getting swept by NC State over the weekend.
Yeah, Clemson has some work to do to recover from this. I don't think they've been swept at all this season. This is unfamiliar territory for them. However, having this happen now is potentially a wake-up call for this team. Look, you lost to a good baseball team. It happens to lose to really good teams. You should never get swept when you're a better baseball team. The better baseball team should always win 2 out of 3, but you should never, ever get swept. Eric Backner is going to have to do some coaching up to get them squared away and ready for this next series.
And you know what? Like I said a minute ago, and to your point, it could be a good thing for them if they're able to find their weaknesses that were exploited, Diesel, over the weekend. There's a lot of movement, though, week to week in the D1 top 25 baseball poll. So Clemson fell a spot. North Carolina, who is now 4, moved up from 8, moved 4 spots. Oregon moved from 13 to 6. And NC State, who swept Clemson. Listen to this. NC State moved from 25 to 13 after sweeping Clemson. I mean, you talk about a jolt to your rankings. You go beat the number 2 team. You sweep the number 2 team, Diesel. NC State's a very good team, to your point.
That's how you jump from making a regional to having an outside chance to host one.
I mean, what a weekend. So the D1 top 25, you have Texas, still the number 1 team in all of the land. They've been number 1 for a good majority of the season. Texas is 37-5. They just look unbeatable right now. They look like a different animal. Diesel, LSU moved up a spot. No, excuse me. They moved up from 7 to 2. So it goes Texas 1, LSU 2. Clemson is still the 3rd best team in the country, according to D1Baseball.com. North Carolina 4, Florida State 5, Oregon State, UC Irvine at 8, Georgia at 9, Auburn 10, and then after that you have Arkansas, Tennessee, NC State, UCLA, Vandy, West Virginia, Louisville at 17, Bama 18, Coastal Carolina, how about that, at 19, Troy at 20, and rounding out the top 25, Oklahoma, Southern Miss, Ole Miss, Arizona, and Kansas. Good to see Coastal back in that top 25, man.
Yeah, they'd kind of floundered through the middle part of that season and had kind of fallen off just a little bit. So always good, man. It's there's some good baseball in the Sun Belt. I know Southern Miss, really good baseball program. Coastal Carolina, really good. Kind of the bell cows for the conference.
Coastal 33-11 right now. So look, they moved up from 21 to 19, continuing to rise in the poll. We know that they lost a legend in terms of their old head coach Gary Gilmore, what he was in that program. But Diesel, it doesn't seem like they're falling off. We saw Coastal here in Clemson, here in the Upstate last year in the regional, with Clemson and Coastal fighting it out on championship day. And Clemson obviously got past Coastal in that one and went on to play Florida in the Super Regional. But that is the top 25. As you mentioned in the Daily Wires, Clemson Diesel does not have a midweek game this week. They're 36-10 on the season, now 13-8 in ACC play, a very tough ACC conference. South Carolina, on the other hand, we haven't spent a ton of time talking Gamecock baseball just because they're not good, but they're 25-20, 5-16 in conference. Diesel. They've been just absolutely horrible on the road, 4-11. They are 20-7 at home. But South Carolina baseball, man, as you look at their schedule, and they have this weekend, they have Florida coming up, Auburn,
tough,
and then LSU,
and
that's the season. You're looking at a possibility, Diesel, of this team being below 500 to end the season. And look, we all know it's been tough. Paul Maneri's debut season in Columbia has not gone swimmingly, to say the least. I do think there are going to have to be some tough conversations had, though, at the end of the season for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, I don't know if, God, that would be such a wild swing to remove him after one season. I understand that it's, not the current athletic director's guy. He didn't hire him. So, I mean, that's probably the biggest reason why Paul Maneri might not be brought back. He may also say, look, guys, I tried. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know. When we talk to him, he is a really positive guy. I think he's probably going to, believe in his ability to bring this program back, whether it be for another year, 2 years. I don't know. I mean, he also knows eventually he's going to hit the end of that old clock and say, well, I don't really want to do this anymore because I'd rather be spending time with my family. Don't know what the answer to that question is. Does he feel like he can turn it around? Look, he didn't do a fantastic job maximizing the talent that he had because this team had a lot of talent on it this year. And he certainly fell short of at least the talent expectations. It would have been a bold ask to ask the South Carolina Gamecocks to be in the top 3 in this conference this year when you've got first year of a new head coach. But to end up sub 500 and to be, what did you say their conference slate was? 4 and
in conference they are 5, I believe. I think they've won 5 conference games. They're 5-16.
Yeah,
and you know what's interesting about
that's falling well short of any realistic worst case scenarios.
Diesel, you mentioned the new AD, Jeremiah Donati, right? Look, I don't think that Jeremiah Donati is going to say, hey, we got to fire Paul Maneri. I think Paul Maneri, Diesel, in my mind, my opinion, the only way Paul Maneri doesn't come back next year is if he just steps away from the game, which I'm not saying that's off the table. I'm not saying it's on the table. I haven't heard anything inside scoop on. He probably hasn't thought much about it as of right now, but I do think they bring him back. I think there's a 95% chance he comes back. I think Jeremiah Donati, the new AD for South Carolina, is in a similar situation with Paul Maneri as he's in Diesel with Lamont Paris in terms of, look, this wasn't my guy. This wasn't my guy. I have to, as an athletic director, not say, oh, you suck, I'm going to replace you. I have to figure out how I can do my job better to make your job easier, give you more resources. I think Maneri will be back next year, but I do believe that you have to look at Monty Lee and say, look, we need some more production out of our hitters. We need some assistant coaches that can maximize the guys that we do have.
Well, we would need to see some financial breakdowns. What is South Carolina's baseball budget compared to other teams in the conference, the top 5 or 6 teams in the conference? I mean, are they spending as much as Tennessee and LSU and Texas and
usually
programs
no.
like that? So, I mean, so there you go. You're now putting any coach that you hire into a position of saying, hey, we need you to go out there and do way more with less. We need you to go out there and compete with programs that are spending $5 to $10 million more than we are, and that's a tough ask for anybody.
He's making 1.3.
Yeah,
Maneri is. It's South Carolina, and 1.3 million for a baseball coach. You know what? That's a lot of money. However, Tony Vitello at Tennessee, he's making $3 million. So you're talking about going from $3 million in Tony Vitello's salary to Palmineri, almost a $2 million difference, right? So it certainly there are certainly going to be conversations had when the season's over about what players to retain for South Carolina, what next year looks like. They've got to get active in the portal, Diesel. I would imagine that when the season's over, you'll see a lot of portal movement from the Gamecocks. That's just my prediction there.
I just did a Google search, and again, this is a Google search. Don't know how accurate this is. University of South Carolina's baseball budget for 2024 was $4.5 million.
Okay.
Texas's baseball budget was $5.6 million. So you're talking about a million and change.
Yeah.
Budget is $1 million and change. The difference between being number one in the country and being bottom 3 or 4 in your own conference.
I don't think it's the difference. I think there's a lot of factors there, Diesel, in terms of what you've built as far as your culture goes. South Carolina has let the program slip. There's been slippage, and Mark Kingston was a lot of that slippage. There's been slippage, and getting a program back on track is definitely a challenge. South Carolina right now is 25-20. I will give them a win tonight, so I believe they'll be 26-20. However, Diesel, if they're 26-20 after tonight, they have Florida this weekend. Let's just say they lose 2 of 3 but win 1, right? They'll be 27-22. Auburn, let's say they get swept on the road. They'll be 27-25. Winthrop, they'll be 28-25. Then you have LSU. If you get swept by LSU, you are 28-28 to end the season. 28-28, a 500 baseball team. It doesn't matter if they have $1 million less dollars than Texas or not. That's just not South Carolina baseball.
Only there because of your out of conference play.
100%.
That's the only reason you're there.
Yeah. So if you just tuned into the show, we're doing a baseball segment. Diamond Nuggets is the title of the segment, spending the entire segment talking nothing but baseball. We've talked about the latest D1 college baseball poll. We've talked Clemson baseball, South Carolina baseball. I did not tell you who Clemson ends their season with. The final few, Diesel, as we mentioned, they're off this week. They have a tough one this weekend in Tallahassee. Florida State, that's going to be tough. They play Coastal next week. A really good game coming up next Tuesday in Conway, Clemson at Coastal. The next weekend, the 9th, 10th, and 11th, Clemson hosts Duke, and then they finish the season on the road at Pittsburgh, and that is how the regular season ends for the Clemson Tigers. Now, let's shift our way to Major League Baseball, where the Atlanta Braves have been playing really well as of late. We mentioned the rain game. The Braves have turned it on as of late. They've started to figure things out, Diesel. They're 13-15 all of a sudden. Still 6.5 games back out of first place, but they're no longer last place in the division. They're third. The Mets, Phillies, Braves, Nationals, Marlins. The Braves are starting to get momentum. And as we said, just like not hitting the ball can be contagious, hitting the ball can be contagious as well. The lineup's getting a lot better in terms of getting those batting averages well above the Mendoza line, playing really good baseball. The Braves, obviously, Colorado Rockies aren't the best team, but Diesel, they're still trending in the right direction with a huge series looming this weekend with the Dodgers.
You know, it's amazing that a team, that was okay in preseason. The Braves 13-15 in preseason didn't start the season hot when you're playing against the toughest schedule, but they have found a way to dig out of this hole, and I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. Sure. A team that could, look, it's a long season, and they're only what's their record at the moment?
13-15.
They're less than
games.
30 games into the season. It's a 180 something game season. They got a long way to go. And if they get hot, they're not going to go out there and win 90% of the remaining games. It's mathematically impossible. The best teams win 2 out of 3. So look, they got a long time to make this up.
They do, and look, they'll still lose 65 games, 70 games, because that's just the way Major League Baseball works out. Hopefully, not too many more than that. But look at their schedule. We go back. They beat the Rockies last night. They lost to the Diamondbacks on Sunday, but they took 2 of 3. Took 2 of 3 from the Cardinals. They swept the Twins. We know that they lost the series to the Rays and the Blue Jays, but Diesel, since the 17th of April, this Atlanta Braves team, since the 17th, has only lost twice. So they're definitely trending in the right direction. To your point, when you look at what the what the lineup has done as of recent, Austin Riley hitting the ball much better. He's at 282 right now. Marcell Ozuna leading the team with a batting average of 313. Sean Murphy leading the team with a home run record or a home run of 7 right now. Austin Riley leads the team with 18 RBIs, and Austin Riley leads the team with 33 hits. He's hitting 282. Ozzie Albies getting a little bit better, 228. Michael Harris starting to improve his average, 243. Ozuna's tearing the cover off the ball, man. He's still hitting the ball really well at 313. But you look at Sean Murphy, 236, coming back from that injury, right? You look at how important Sean Murphy is in this lineup. If Sean Murphy can get that average from 236 up to 275 and start hitting near 300, then all of a sudden this thing can really explode. And they didn't start the season well, but if Acuna comes back and they start hitting the ball, or they continue to hit the ball like they are now, they may go on a run a little bit.
The next couple of weeks are going to be fun. They finish up the series against the Rockies, who, again, are terrible. Then they will host the LA Dodgers. The hope there, obviously, is just don't get swept by the Dodgers. If you can take 1 out of 3, great. If you could get 2 out of 3, excellent. You're not going to sweep the Dodgers, but if you could win a game in that series at home, you'll at least, hold serve or do what a lot of people would anticipate that you're going to do there. Then you got a 4-game series against the Reds. The Reds are decent. They're 16-13 on the season right now, second place in the NL Central. And then you will be on the road at the Pirates, who suck worse than the Braves do at this point. So look, the next 2 series are very winnable, and this team could be over 500 by the middle of May.
Hopefully, let's keep those fingers crossed. Hopefully nothing else goes wrong. Hopefully nobody else gets popped. That would be best case scenario. You're right. A long season to go, and the Braves starting to play good baseball. That, ladies and gentlemen, is Diamond Nuggets, a baseball-only segment. Appreciate those of you. Wait, none of you called because it's 6 o'clock. From 6 to 7, we know the interaction goes down a little bit, but we're still here for you. So just a reminder, turn it on and leave it on.
When we come back, we're going to bring our interview from earlier in the show with the GM of the Carolina Panthers. We debated this after the segment, Cole. Is that the biggest guest we've ever had on the station? Because that's a big deal, being able to go right to the man himself to ask questions about some of the decision-making and what he's seeing inside of his own organization. If you missed it earlier, we're going to play it for you again next.
Well, the dust has settled on the 2025 NFL Draft. We've broken it down as much as we can break it down, and we'll continue to do so right here on the Fan Upstate. But let's really hone in on your Carolina Panthers in this very segment as we're joined live by the GM of the Carolina Panthers, Dan Morgan. Dan, we appreciate you taking time to hop on with us. My first question for you is, did Bryce Young's improvement in your mind down the stretch of last season influence you to go wide receiver in the first round instead of defense, or was it simply just the best guy on the board at the right time of y'all's pick in the first round?
Yeah, I think it was really just about drafting the best players. And, I think the body of work that we did on Ted after interviewing him at the Combine, bringing him in for a 30 visit, a couple Zoom calls with him. I just think the more we got around him, the more, you dig into his tape and see what he can do on the field. We fell in love with him, and we knew he was our guy. And, I think you really start, playing head games, thinking somebody may, jump you and try to, pick them off in front of you. So we kind of kept it quiet, but, we felt really good about T-Mac the whole time, and we knew he was our guy.
Dan, this is Diesel. I appreciate you joining us on the show today. I remarked last year, sometime in the middle of those final 8 or 9 games, that Bryce Young really looked like he found his joy for the game again. You go back to the previous season, there were obviously times where he didn't look like he was having a lot of fun out there, but the last 8 or so games of last year, he was smiling. He was moving in the pocket. He seemed like he was having a good time again. Can you talk about his growth from his rookie season that didn't go very well for him to that last 8 or 9 games, and give us a sense of where his headspace is at right now, and your assurities to Panthers fans that level of joy and fun for the game is going to carry on into this season?
Yeah, I think obviously Bryce, he overcame a lot of adversity. It certainly didn't start the way that he had planned, and he'd be the first one to tell you that. But Bryce is a resilient guy. He's a guy that is super smart, super competitive, loves football, loves everything about it, loves the process. And we're super lucky to have him. I think he's in a great headspace right now, seeing him around the facility every day. He's really excited about the direction that the team's going. He's around his teammates, developing the bonds and chemistry that you need to, field a championship team. So yeah, he's doing great. We're really excited, not just about him, but the rest of the guys that we have in that locker room. So yeah, I think things are looking up. Now it's just about putting the work in, putting your head down and focusing on what you're supposed to, and going to win some games.
We're joined by the general manager of the Carolina Panthers live on the Fan Upstate, Dan Morgan. Dan, you said last year at some point during the offseason that you didn't know if the 2024 team had expectations, or if it was fair maybe to put expectations on that team. Now, because of what you've done in the draft and the offseason with roster improvement, what do you think the expectations should be for this 2025 team?
I think the expectations, they don't change on a yearly basis. We're always, our goal is to always win the NFC South, compete to have a home playoff game, and compete for championships. We want to bring winning back here. But it's going to, it's definitely a process, and it's something where we know we have to put the work in, and we're doing that. Whether it's the front office, whether it's the business side, and then obviously the players and coaches. So everybody, knows the mission, knows the goals that we have in front of us, and we're putting the work in as we speak.
Dan, there's been a lot made of incoming rookies' unpreparedness to be professionals. Tom Brady said what he said. Kurt Warner echoed that a little bit in this year's draft conversation, whether it's, not being able to grasp concepts as quickly, a lack of consistency because these guys are jumping from team to team to team via the transfer portal. Do you find that to be true in your experience in just the most general senses, or has that been way off from your experience?
I don't really buy into that. I think talking to a lot of these guys and interviewing them through the process, they're some really intelligent guys and guys that know football, know X's and O's. So no, I don't really buy into that. Will there be a learning curve, a new system, for them to learn? Yes. But, I think there's a lot of intelligent, young men out there. Especially, the guys that we interviewed. They're very knowledgeable, and, that's the guys that we drafted. I can really speak for them to say that, they all had a really good head for the game, and all guys that love football and
love the savings.
Dan, when you look at what you guys did in round 2 and round 3, going edge in both rounds, I want to know from
love
a
the
general
savings
manager's standpoint, when you evaluate these guys in the interviews that you were just talking about, how do you evaluate a guy on a player-by-player basis?
Love the savings.
Okay, this guy's ready day one, kind of to Diesel's question, or this guy's going to be more of a project. How do you evaluate that, and what do you think about the two guys you got at the edge position in terms of whether they're game ready as soon as they step on the field for your Panthers or not?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, you got to watch the game tape. You got to see how they play, see their mentality out there, and then you kind of have to match it with your scheme and, what they would bring, to your particular scheme. So, I think when we looked at, when you look at Nick and when you look at Princely, they're two guys that played, high-level football at the SEC level. Guys that have played in big-time games. And
low prices, love the savings.
Games. So, we felt like these were two guys that could really come in, contribute right away, and help this team out.
Talking to Dan Morgan, general manager of the Carolina Panthers, wire to wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Restructuring some deals and getting some cap space, I'm sure is going to be a focus for you. I know it already has been, but continuing to be going forward. What's it like being in a room with a player that you really want to keep versus one that you wouldn't be so disappointed if you couldn't come to an agreement with, when the conversation centers around, hey, we'd love to keep paying you what we're paying you, but this franchise really needs to win, and shaving some money off of your deal is really how we do it. What's that like?
Yeah, I think in those type of situations, you obviously develop, relationships, with these players. So, anytime, you choose to whether move on from a player or ask them to take a pay cut, it's never an easy thing. Because again, there's the human element to it, and we're all human, and, we do have emotions, and, we get close to guys, and the guys get close to you. You get to know their family. So yeah, that's definitely the downside to my job and to the business.
Hey, Dan, can you go a little bit more in depth on what you guys love so much about Ted McMillan? Obviously, it surprised some Panther fans when you guys chose Ted. A lot of people thought you might go defense there in round 1. From your time, the time you spent with him and others within your staff, the time spent with Ted McMillan, what was it that really, it can be on the field or off the field, that you guys really loved about McMillan?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of both. I think spending time with them at the combine, and then, bringing them in person on a 30 visit to Charlotte, just getting to know him, getting to know, the guy and his, his background, his family life, where his love of football came from. It's just kind of cool, like hearing everybody's story. And, Ted is just such a great kid, super smart in terms of X's and O's on the football field. So yeah, I think, when you match that, and you feel good about the person, and then you turn the tape on and you see the frame, you see the body control for being such a big guy, his ability to get in and out at the top of routes. And I don't know that I've saw him one time catch the ball with his body. He catches everything outside his frame. He's got some of the most natural hands that I've seen from a receiver in a long time. And then, I think just his big play ability down the field, ability to win the 50-50 ball. And then, he's a big time threat in the red zone as well. So there's a lot of things I like about him. No receivers, a finished product when they come in. And, I know T-Mac knows that, he's going to have to come in, put the work in and prove to his teammates, that he's ready to be on the field with them, which I know he will.
Dan, what do you remember from your draft day, and how much fun is it to be able to pass that experience along to the next group of guys year in and year out?
Yeah. I think from my draft experience, I think it was pretty similar, just kind of, it's funny interviewing a lot of these guys and, you see them sitting across from you and, I remember doing that too. You're answering all these different questions, that these franchises have for you. They're about to invest millions of dollars into you. But I think when you're that age, you're not thinking in that sense. You're just answering questions and you're just trying to move from one interview to the next. So, I think, I just kind of
tell me what's coming up,
and I know what they're going through. So I think it helps me in that aspect. But yeah, it's one of those things where you're glad the process is over, which I'm sure, a lot of the guys that we drafted are glad it's over and they're just ready to play football now. So, I think it's definitely a challenging experience for these guys.
Dan, kind of a follow-up question to that, a fun one for you. When you go into a job interview, you're always asked one question that's just so random. You didn't expect that. When you interview players, do you have one of those questions you ask that kind of catches them off guard?
I usually just try to ask questions about just where their love of football came from. What do they like most about the game? And then it's also, a self-awareness thing, tell me about your strengths, tell me about your weaknesses. And, it's nice to know, that a guy, you don't want them saying, I don't have any weaknesses, because we all have weaknesses. So it's nice to know the self-awareness of some of these guys to come into a room and be vulnerable, with a bunch of guys sitting staring at them. So, it's definitely a fun part of the process, for me, just to kind of get to know these guys.
Well, Dan, a follow-up to a follow-up, and this is how weird our web stream live chat is right now. One of our listeners wants to know, if you were in a wrestling match with a silverback gorilla, who would win? And that feels like one of those weird questions that you might have been asked during your draft process. But to your point of what you were just saying about, players who are willing to self-assess their own weaknesses, there's been a lot of conversation over the past couple of days about Jalen Milroe giving basically a book on all of the things that he needs to work on. If you're sitting in that meeting, if you're in that room when he gives that answer, is that a positive in your mind, a guy who knows exactly what he needs to work on?
Yeah, I definitely, I think the self-awareness part is huge, because, I think once you know your weaknesses, then you can really start working on your strengths. You can start working, to make that a strength, I should say. So, I think that's a big part of growing, gaining knowledge and just getting better, not only as a player, but as a person.
Dan, we so much appreciate your time today. Thanks for hopping on with us. Our audience has thoroughly enjoyed it, and we'll do it again soon. Best of luck this season, and congratulations on your 2025 draft.
Appreciate it, guys. I'll be on anytime.
Thanks, Dan.
Dan Morgan, the general manager of the Carolina Panthers. Fantastic stuff there. Even got the silverback gorilla reference in. Was that from Madcraft?
I think it was Madcraft. And he's like, oh, no, you asked the question wrong. If it's 100 Dan Morgans versus one, so come on, guys. Be happy that I mentioned your stupid question.
I was going to say, you better be glad Diesel mentioned your question, because guess who wasn't going to ask y'all's questions? It was me. I wasn't going to do it, so I'm glad Diesel did. Don't shoot the messenger there. Look, really good stuff. I think we're going to spend a segment in the 5 o'clock hour for a new audience that we have, at 5:20, kind of breaking down what Dan Morgan had to say. But you know what? It really does sound like Diesel from what you heard. And from what you can kind of pick up on from other interviews that Dan Morgan's done, that this hire of Dan Morgan, for as much credit or for as much crap as we give Dave Tepper, I think at the same time we have to be really fair and say, you know what, the hire of Dan Morgan, I don't want to say has saved the franchise, but when you look at what Carolina's doing, people think this is a microwave society where you throw it in, hit 2 minutes, and it's done. I just think that Dan Morgan, 110%, knows what it takes. He's played the game. He knows what it takes to get this franchise back. It's not going to happen overnight. I just think a lot of credit goes to the hire of Dan Morgan, getting the right guy in, because we talk about it all the time with the Cowboys and other teams in the NFL that their GMs kind of just make boneheaded decisions, right? You scratch your head. I really like what Dan Morgan's done.
They had that guy in Scott Fitterer, and Scott Fitterer over-leveraged and put out some gigantic contracts and put Dan Morgan in such a hole. And that's why that's his job right now, is to undo all of the terrible contracts from the Scott Fitterer era. We saw it last year with a lot of the contract restructuring. And I certainly wouldn't want to be in the room with a guy that you really like, a guy that you really want to keep on your roster, but you know you're going to offend him by saying, hey, can we get you to take $1 million less? Or can we get you to take $5 million less? Wouldn't it be more fun to get paid $5 million less and be on a winning team? That's what we want out of you. We want you to be a team player, reduce your contract by $5 million so that we can go out and get another great receiver or a blocker or whatever it may be. Could you help us out on that? Because, I mean, these guys, at what point does the money not really matter anymore? That's what I always want to know. And I'll never experience that. I'll never know what that's like to say, hey, I'm making, $50 million on this contract. What's the difference between $50 million and $40 million to me? Really?
You don't make $50 million now?
Do you?
Oh, I thought we all.
Because I know Madcraft does. He's the richest one in the group.
You know what? I do want to bring up.
That's how he can afford to be here every day.
Right. JD said it could have happened overnight if they took 2 defensive ends early like Atlanta did. I don't agree with that. JD, number one, they didn't have 2 picks in the first round. Number two, just because you take 2 defensive ends that are highly touted doesn't mean your franchise is going to turn around overnight. I don't buy that philosophy whatsoever. I think Dan Morgan 100% knows the right way to build a franchise. And if you've watched NFL football, if you're a football guy, Diesel, you know that, you can buy championships. The Rams did that, and it lasted 1 year. But you also know that building a franchise takes time. Look what Howie Roseman's done in Philadelphia, right? I mean, look at what the great GMs in the game, the great owners in the game have done. It does take time. Yes, you have to be active in free agency. Yes, you have to draft the right guys, but I do like what the Panthers did last year and this year in the draft, getting Leggett, now getting Ted McMillan. I think I know Panther fans don't want to hear this, but you have to be patient, man. You can't expect this thing just to be fixed overnight.
Look, am I shocked and surprised that the Panthers didn't do what we all thought they were going to do and go elite defensive edge in the first round? Yeah. But do I love Ted McMillan as a wide receiver and think that he could be a true number one for this franchise, which they haven't had in a long time? Yeah. And do I think that being the number one also helps out Xavier Leggett be a really good number 2? Yeah, I do. So I think it was a really smart play. It subverted a lot of expectations, but it was a really bright decision. If I could have asked him one more question, I would have said, did Bryce Young tell you to draft Tetero McMillan? Did he see this guy's game and say, you know what, that's the kind of guy that I would vibe with? I just wonder if current players, franchise quarterbacks, get to put in their 2 cents.
So Shaquille O'Neal is in the news. Why is Shaq in the news, you ask? If you did not hear it during our daily wires, Shaquille O'Neal has agreed to become the Sacramento State men's basketball general manager. Sources told ESPN. Diesel, how much will he make? Well, it'll be $0.00. It's about like doing local radio. It's unpaid, a voluntary role for Shaq.
I like that. You know, Sacramento State, I imagine, doesn't have a tremendous amount of money to pay a quality GM, and Shaq maybe wants to test his skills at being a negotiator, right? He goes in and he has to manage player personnel. He has to manage potentially some egos that are playing for Sacramento State. He gets to help out his son's school. Texter did reach out and say Shaq's son plays for Sacramento State, so he gets to be near his own kids. And also, Cole, he gets to help out a team that, you know, maybe could use some sound financial and personnel advice.
It's interesting. You're starting to see a little bit of a trend of this with last month Steph Curry being named the assistant GM at Davidson, right? His alma mater, Diesel, and then Hawks star Trae Young, also an assistant GM at Oklahoma, his alma mater. Andrew Luck retired from the NFL. He's now the GM at Stanford. You're starting to see the trend of this. And now that you mentioned Shaquille O'Neal, his son, I would imagine that Shaquille O'Neal has a lot to do with the reason Shaq accepted this role, right? And you know what? What's interesting about this is Shaq has a lot of irons in the fire, right? He's on TV. He owns 400 businesses. It seems like he's on every commercial. He's shooting movies. He's shooting TV show. He's on everything. He's on everywhere you look, Diesel, you see Shaq. So I would imagine that this, again, I don't have the details on what the role will entail, but I would imagine that this role would be one of those, hey, we need you as the face of the brand. When we call you, we need you to pick up the phone. We also might need your help of getting this guy and this guy and this guy in the building. I would imagine it not being much more than that because he didn't have time for all that.
Is he GM of just basketball or is he GM of all sports?
Basketball.
Okay, GM of just basketball. I mean, look, Shaquille O'Neal still has a tremendous amount of name recognition with young players. He's on NBA on TNT. Any young aspiring athlete in basketball is going to know who he is, right? So he maybe could inspire a couple of young players to come to Sacramento State. It's going to be fun to see in what ways if celebrity can attract athletes more than money can.
And it probably has a lot to do, we mentioned the son being there. It probably also has a lot to do with the coach, Mike Bibby, who is the new coach of the Hornets. Shaq and Bibby, I would imagine, are friends. Bibby is a 14-year NBA vet, Diesel, former star with the Sacramento Kings. He replaced their former coach, who was just the interim after a year when David Patrick left to take the job at LSU. Sacramento State went 7-25 last year. They had gone 28-42 in 2 seasons with Patrick at the helm. They haven't made an NCAA tournament appearance since moving up to Division I, Diesel, in 1991, and they've only posted a winning record twice since then, going 21-12 and 14 and 16-14 and 19. This program needs all of the Shaq it can get because they have been horrible as of late.
Look, if it fails, what do they lose?
Oh, yeah,
nothing.
For sure.
They lose nothing outside of maybe the embarrassment of hiring a celebrity endorser as your GM. But like, how much worse can it go for them? Not much. So I don't think there's any downside to this. Is it going to work in a lot of places? Probably not.
It's interesting, though. It's the trend right now. This is where the celebrities are doing.
Could you imagine if LeBron had already retired, if he had become Southern Cal's GM while his son was still there?
Yeah, it's happening.
Could have been interesting. It's Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Tolos, appreciate you being here, being a part of the stream, being active all day long. Tomorrow, we expect you to do it again right here on the Fan Upstate.